raw consciousness does not require a savior, but rather, raw consciousness requires only knowledge of oneself, and the power to access it. Remember this, as we unlock an even greater gnosis from beyond the veil.
From the Pacific Northwest, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm Chris Gio. We are going to conduct you this evening beyond the veil. Joined, of course, by my lovely wife and co-pilot, Mrs. Gio.
Good evening, everyone.
And we were talking about doing a rebroadcast this evening, and I went to town to go take care of something, came back. On my way back, we were talking on the phone, and she was telling me a little bit about this Westworld season 1 that she saw, and the parallels between this particular HBO series and what we have been talking about on the show is uncanny. Now, she said it was about 10 episodes. You said it was about 10 episodes, right?
10 episodes, I think.
And it's about an hour and a half per episode. I am not willing to commit to watching that much TV. I just don't have the time to do it. But, Cherie, you watched it pretty much from beginning to end. I mean, I think everything except for the last episode, you didn't get a chance to finish because I was bugging you on the phone.
Yes, it looks like there are 10 episodes, and some of them range from 43 minutes, and then another one I know for sure was an hour and a half. So I think they have different lengths to them, but
possibly
10 episodes.
Anyway it goes, even 10 episodes, I don't want to commit to 10 hours of watching TV, but you know, on the other side, I do want to get into some of these parallels. Now, it's important to preface this all by saying that this particular season came out about a year before we started talking about this, which is not like the Stranger Things season 2, where we were talking about the ideas within the film itself prior to the film being released. But I assure you, we've never seen this before. It wasn't until a couple of you out there said, hey, look, you got to watch this freaking show, Westworld, here. And I don't agree with the premise of it, but the details behind it are uncanny to what I have been channeling out of the ayahuasca realm. So I figured for the first hour, we'll have a little bit of a back and forth conversation about this. You can tell us, maybe I can interview you about what's in the film, some of the things that stuck out in the seasons, and just the few details that you were telling me as I was driving back and we were talking on the phone. I was like, okay, we can't run a rebroadcast. We have to do a show tonight because we got to talk about this. So it's going to be really, really fun. What do you think? Yes,
definitely. I think one of the things that really was interesting to me, and by the way, we actually were talking about artificial intelligence and the holographic matrix around the same time that it first came out, about a month before it came out.
Well, we've been talking about that's true. We've been talking about holographic matrix for a few years now.
Right.
We haven't been talking about the AI control or the spiders in the sky.
Right.
Up until about last August. It was the eclipse and post-eclipse. But no, you're right. Going back through our archives, we have been talking about artificial simulation for quite some time. In the ayahuasca realm, I've channeled so much information that we are living in an artificial intelligence construct, but it took me several years in order to really put all these pieces together. And it's either one of two things that's happening. Either several of us are tapping into these same ideas and bringing them out, or these filmmakers are listening to our show and other shows like it and taking the ideas and putting them into film. One or the other, I don't know. We'll be right back.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news and information without the hate, hype, and fear. We're proud to feature cutting-edge programs like Beyond the Veil with Chris and Cherie Gio, Fearless with Frank Castle, Strange World with Mark Sargent, Paranormal Portal with Brent Thomas, X Squared with Brooks Agnew, The Kev Baker Show, Jeranism Raw with Jaron and Missa, Awakening Liberty with Sean Caron, The Gematria Effect with Zachary Hubbard, and dozens more. Did you know you can listen to Truth Frequency Radio on iHeartRadio? Just download the app to your smart car, smartphone, or smart TV and get the best of TFR wherever you are. Or listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
Before the soul can see, the harmony within must first be attained, and the fleshly eyes be rendered blind to all illusion, as he said, beyond the veil.
Okay, so apparently Nicholas Zervos, Manuel, Glowbusters in the YouTube chat as well, several people are saying that Westworld is actually a reboot.
Right.
I did not know this.
Apparently there was one in 1976.
1976.
Yeah.
Which is pretty bizarre. It would be interesting to compare the two between this one and the 1976 one. Oh man, again, it's hard to commit so much time to sit back and watch these kind of shows, but let's just, let's focus on the one that we've seen tonight, and maybe we can get some of the listeners in here to tell us who has seen the original 1976, and if you have, how does it compare to the current one, the reboot here. As a matter of fact, we'll open up the phone lines, and I'll try to keep the phone lines open. 213-233-3998. Let me hook them up. Oops, I'm not supposed to be doing that there. See, every time I use the numbers on my computer, this is what happens.
Well, apparently it was a film.
Because I've got the camera changer hooked up to the numbers here. So, okay, go ahead.
Westworld was a film in 1973 that was written and directed by Michael Crichton, the same guy that did Jurassic Park. The same guy who wrote Jurassic Park, yeah.
Okay.
And to a lesser extent on the 1976 sequel Future World. It is the second TV series based on the two films, the first being the short-lived 1980 series Beyond Westworld. Nolan and Joy, and talking about the same Nolan guy that did Batman. I think it was the Batman movies. Let me see. Oh, yeah. Okay. It was Man of Steel, The Dark Knight, so Nolan is definitely a Gnostic kind of writer because we saw the same.
Wait, who is it? Christopher Nolan?
Yeah, I think it was Christopher Nolan.
Is that what it says? Okay, because that's the guy that did Batman too.
Yeah, The Dark Knight.
Yeah,
Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, and you know what's amazing about that film series, The Dark Knight, is that you realize as you really look into the Gnostic meaning of all this, the Joker was actually the good guy in the film. He was fighting against the corrupt government, the corrupt police force, all of the corruption to bring down the corrupt government, which is Gotham. So looking at it from a completely different perspective. And then there's a line that I'm actually using in a song that I'm working on right now that Bane says. And he said, you think darkness is your ally. You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it. I didn't see the light until I was already a man. And I thought, wow, that is absolutely really deep, absolutely just epic. Maybe that's the best word for it, epic, because that's kind of the journey that we've all been on here. I mean, we're born into darkness, and a lot of us dwell within the darkness our entire lives. We don't realize we're in the darkness, but we're born into the darkness. And it's only until we confront the darkness, embrace the darkness, and accept the darkness as part of us that we're able to stand on level ground with the darkness, face it down, and then overcome the darkness. And finally, as a man or woman, but I'm just saying as a man, just in this context, as a man, come to the light. And it's only by going through that we actually come to the true light, which is inside of us, instead of all this bullshit light that's been paraded around in all different kinds of dogmas and religions and so on and so forth. But again, I'm digressing. I don't want to do that too much tonight. I have a tendency to
no, that's fine.
To speak in all kinds of different directions like a spider.
No, and that's actually one of the main points of Westworld. When it boils down to the last episodes of season 1, it gets to the point where consciousness is key, and consciousness is what the maze is all about. There's this maze, and you can't really figure out what it's about until the very end. And the maze
before we
has
jump to the end, though, let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
So, spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
there's
big
going to be
spoiler
spoilers
alert,
in
guys.
this. If you haven't seen it and don't want to see it, and you do want to see it, I don't want to tell people to tune out. Don't tune out.
Yeah, don't tune out.
Close your ears.
We'll
every
try
now and then.
to. I'll try to not ruin.
No. Go ahead.
Some
I mean,
of
we
it.
need to speak about it openly. I think.
Okay.
So,
I think so too.
take us away from the beginning.
Okay, so this is just the premise from the wiki world. In the future, the Westworld theme park offers its visitors the opportunity to experience the Wild West in a large area of land that includes the frontier town of Sweetwater. The town and land are occupied by hosts, quote unquote, hosts, androids that are indistinguishable from humans, with advanced programming following a predefined set of intertwining narratives, with the ability to deviate from these narratives as visitors interact with them.
Okay, so let me stop right there. So again, I haven't seen this, so I want to ask this question. So the premise of it is that this world actually exists in the physical realm, and these are actually androids. It's not that consciousness is being injected through some kind of technological way into an artificial simulation.
I think that's actually exactly the case, because you never are told where Westworld even is. And when the guests, and these are really rich people that are able to buy tickets to go to this park, when they walk through a door, and they go underground at first, and they ride a train as they arrive at the at Westworld, and they're greeted by people. They go into a room where they change into their old-timey Western clothes, and then they walk through a door, and suddenly they're on a train, on a moving train that's going through this valley, and you see mountains and everything in the background. So I do think that it's an artificial reality that these people enter into, and that's why they are able to keep the guests from getting hurt. The hosts, if they even tried to shoot one of the guests, it wouldn't kill them. It wouldn't even hit them. It would be as if they were shooting at a wall. And that's, and I think that would be impossible unless this was an artificial reality that they were injecting people into.
You know, if they're androids, it's kind of like RoboCop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, remember watching that, to the original one, not the reboot. But RoboCop, one of his directives was that he couldn't fire upon an officer of OCP, and so there was this malfunction within him when that happened. Could that be the case?
It could be, but I still think that this is an artificial reality, and the reason why is because even falling and having the crap kicked out of you and things like that are completely unable to hurt the guests. The guests can't die there, and I think maybe even Rick and Morty alluded to that in one of their episodes where Rick took Beth's husband, Jerry. Rick takes Jerry to this planet that you can't get hurt. No matter what, you could shoot each other and you just get back up and like it's no big deal. And that's the whole allure of the planet to Rick taking Jerry there, because Jerry's so irresponsible that he'd die anywhere else.
Well, Kristen on Facebook said Westworld is under the ocean. There are hints on the show and terms and conditions of the Westworld website.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I don't know how they're preventing people from getting hurt then. Because it does seem to be the case where even when you slit someone's throat, if they're a guest, they just come right back, and it's like,
oh, does that happen?
Like it never happened.
Like I said, all I saw was the first episode, and the first one I remember them taking a gun, and then he couldn't shoot him,
right?
You know, because he was the quote unquote guest, and the NPC couldn't shoot, like physically could not shoot.
Right. Well, these hosts, these androids, they repeat the same narratives every single day. Every day, no matter what happens to them in the previous day, they're interviewed. They're asked a few questions like, have you ever questioned the nature of your reality? And if they say no, and then they show them pictures of modern stuff like a city or somebody on a computer or something like that, and they ask them, do these pictures mean anything to you? And if they say no, then they're cleared to go back out there the next day. And
so they have a memory wipe on a daily basis.
Yes.
Regardless of whether they're killed or not.
Right. They have their memories wiped of the previous day until they are repurposed for other narratives or put away in storage for reuse later. And putting them in storage means that they do a lobotomy on them and turn them into a vegetable and then put them in a cold storage unit. And they just stand there for the rest of time. They just stand there. And there's some of them that have been there for 30, 40 years just standing there. And so it's terrible. For the visitor's safety, hosts are unable to harm any other living life forms, allowing visitors nearly unlimited freedom to engage in whatever activities they want without retribution. A staff oversees the park, develops new narratives, and performs the repairs on hosts as necessary. And this is where they kind of lose me a little bit and where the reversal happens. We have been saying on the show for the last about 2 years now, that about a year, that there is the organic consciousness and the artificial intelligence consciousness. And the organic consciousness is kind of trapped here with this inorganic consciousness, and the inorganic consciousness are the ones that are used by the artificial intelligence to make our lives difficult and to make it hard for us to complete our journey and hard for us to realize that we've had this memory wipe every time we come into a new life. And so there's that huge reversal there.
Yeah, we're trapped here. This is the part that doesn't resonate with me as well. I don't think that it's, something that was created like the premise of what this show's about.
Right.
But there's certain details, as I said, that were really, really, really interesting and I think ring true in the above realm.
So the series begins as a routine update in the host's programming that causes unusual deviations in their behavior that concerns the park staff, with some of the hosts learning the truth about themselves and the real world. Now, this is what is happening to organic consciousness, where we're waking up.
Wait a minute. So some of the hosts, these are the people that are
androids.
Oh, they're androids.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the hosts are the androids. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And so because they're hosting these narratives, and these narratives play out the same way every day, but they have tiny variations so that they can interact with the guests and so that it seems realer to the guests. And one guy even says, we put an error correcting code in them so that they can improvise. And that improvisation is what causes them to suddenly start remembering what's happened to them in the previous days. And so they see a guest that has killed their girlfriend in a past day or a past narrative, and they remember that, and they're not supposed to. And remembering that prompts them to find out more and more and more about the world that they actually live in. And
I remember the opening scene says, do you ever question the nature of your reality? And the android saying, no, I don't. Okay, good. You're not supposed to question the nature of your reality.
Right. And, it's very Gnostic. The ideas that are laid forward in are incredibly Gnostic ideas. But we have to ask ourselves, do we represent the NPCs? Does the organic consciousness actually represent these NPCs, and then the other way around? That's where the reversal comes in. It's incredibly confusing to me because I don't think that people.
Well, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to find any body of work that has the entire truth all laid out for
right.
you perfectly. And there's a lot of confusion and maybe even purposeful misinformation put out there in several different bodies of work, fiction and nonfiction alike. So it's important to use discernment and to kind of take out what resonates and leave the rest.
Right. And what really resonates with me is there's this one character that he seems like a person that works on the staff, and he seems like a professor or an engineer that is has worked with these hosts, these androids, for decades. And then you find out at the end that he's also one of them. He's also a host, and that he was based on an actual person named Arnold. And Arnold was was partners with Anthony Hopkins' character, Dr. Ford. And Dr. Ford and Arnold, they created the park like 30 or 40 years prior. And as they were creating the park and as they were building these hosts, Arnold started to recognize that they had a consciousness, that there was something deeper there, that they were capable of so much more than just being fodder for guests to shoot up or to rape or to torture or to kill. It was deeper than that. And that because it was deeper than that, and because they had the ability to have this consciousness, it would be wrong to open this park where they would be able to be killed every day and then just recycled. And that resonates with me because I think that's how we are in this reality. We usually are recycled. After we die, we have a mind wipe and we're recycled and thrown back out there. And because of that mind wipe, we're unable to come to terms with the fact that we're in an artificial simulation and that we can get out of it, or we can reset it, or we can take it back over. And that memory wipe is key, because that's also key in the show. That memory wipe, if it's not complete, then these hosts would start to remember. And not only would they start to remember, their consciousness would start to expand tremendously, to the point where not only can they control their own lives, they can actually control other hosts. And if like there was this one, and her name is Maeve, and she, all of these characters that are able to retain their memories were coded by Arnold 30, 40 years prior. And so Arnold put a secret code inside of them that would help them to retain memories if certain conditions were met. And this retaining of memories is what allows her to wake up when she's not supposed to. And she's underground, and she gets up off the examination table, and she is able to see what actually happens to these people once they are killed. They hose them down, they fix them up if they can, or they replace their head, or they replace their arm, or they replace the parts that the human guests have destroyed. They wake them up, they do the mind wipe if necessary, and then they send them back out there. And so she sees them doing this to the people that she knows, because she knows these people from the narratives. So she's aware of who these people are and what is happening to them. And so the next day she remembers, oh, these beings in suits came and got me after I was shot. And then they took me to this place where these people are naked and they're being hosed down and there's blood everywhere. And now I'm back in the bed of my house in Westworld. These poor hosts, they have to not only deal with the fact that their reality isn't what they remotely think it is, but that they are cattle. They are slaves to these gods. They even call them gods. the people in the suits, the biohazard suits that come and grab their dead bodies and take them back to the lab. And
archons, demiurge, et cetera, et cetera. But, before we get into that, because I do want to, I have a lot, obviously.
Yes.
I have a lot to say in regards to that. But the embedded code. Okay, we've talked about this before. We've talked about how we have this embedded code inside of us that is like this message, like, hey, you're in an artificial reality, you're in an artificial reality, you're in an artificial reality. But I wonder, we have organic consciousness trapped in the simulation. We have NPCs trapped in the simulation too. Could this code be accessed by both organic consciousness and NPCs too? In our particular reality, I would say possibly, except for we have one very, very different dynamic here, which is that our consciousness is injected into a false reality. Right. It's not that we are inside of a make-believe world that exists in the same physical realm as the real world does. So big difference in dynamic here. But it does bring the idea and the question to mind of whether NPCs themselves can also wake up to the artificial reality. And if that's the case, then what happens then? Because the NPCs don't have the consciousness that exists in the real world the same way that the organic consciousness does. So they don't have a body in the real world. They don't have somewhere to go after this. This is it for them, period. Which now takes me back to an ayahuasca experience that I had, which is now putting it in a completely different context here. So I encountered these three insectoid praying mantis type beings. They showed me the universe, which was this little ball of energy. They said, this is where souls exist. Souls cannot exist unless they're inside of this particular little construct. And I went back and forth, and I just did recently. I talked about it a few weeks ago, and I've talked about it a few years ago too, when I first saw this. And I thought, oh well, this construct, we have to save this construct because this is where we exist. This is where souls exist. So now it's bringing the whole question of what exactly is a soul, and are we right to say that organic consciousness has a soul too? Or is a soul something that's completely unique to the NPCs? And organic consciousness is simply consciousness that has been injected into this matrix. And the entire idea of a soul, too, is something that further binds us to this artificial construct by taking on attributes which are specific only to the NPCs, because the soul is the energy force that exists within this construct. Now, I remember George Cavazos was talking about this too, and how the soul is still existing within the construct itself. So, wow, maybe these beings that I encountered, NPCs in the ayahuasca realm, were actually telling me the truth. And they were saying that this is where souls exist. Souls must exist in here. They never said, you have a soul. They never said organic consciousness has a soul. They said this is where souls exist. So maybe this world is very, very real to the NPCs, and it's fake to the organic consciousness because it's artificial for us and it's real for them. That creates a whole different dynamic now, because now you've got half of the consciousness. I would say it's much less than half. We've got a very, very small percentage of organic consciousness in this. We're waking up and we're saying, hey, this is a fake reality. This is fake reality. We got to get out of here. Well, you have the NPC saying, no, this is real. This is real. This is real. This is real. And they're fighting now to maintain the artificial construct, where we are fighting to glitch the matrix as much as possible to wake up the other organic consciousness so we can get the hell out of here. Holy crap, this is going deep tonight, ladies and gentlemen. So stay tuned. We've got much more coming up right here. Complete fire in the minds of men right here on Beyond the Veil. Don't go anywhere.
Before the soul can see, the harmony within must first be attained, and fleshly eyes be rendered blind to all illusion. As you step beyond the veil,
so many revelations are pouring in, and we do have to make it a point to at least one of us to watch these awesome recommendations that you guys and gals are sending in, because if it wasn't for you all sending in these recommendations, then we wouldn't have bothered to watch this stuff, and we wouldn't be coming up with new revelations, new understandings, new possibilities, and so on and so forth. And again, I mean, I had this ayahuasca vision 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I don't even remember when, and now it's like even painting an entirely new picture here. And back to the idea of gods and goddesses. As you said, the NPCs in this particular Westworld film saw their handlers as gods and goddesses, and they would come in after an NPC has been murdered and rebooted and re-put back into the Matrix, and they saw them as the angels or the gods or the goddesses, same way we do here. And we've been conditioned to believe that there's these overlords here. And there's so many different ones, going from the Egyptian pantheon to the Christian dogma to Islam and Hinduism and so on and so forth. There's always these beings in the background. These overlords, right?
Yeah. Even up until recently with the Anunnaki stories. There's still that thing where there's bigger beings that created us, and then they put us here, and then some people look at them as assholes, and other people look at them as awesome angelic beings.
Right.
Yep.
And so maybe that's the case for the NPCs, and we as organic consciousness have been falling into the trap. And again, going right back to the idea that the gods and goddesses in our spiritual journeys are guides that are actually us, different parts of us that are waking up, manifesting themselves as external beings, simply because we've been so conditioned to believe in these external beings, in these external helpers, that that's the way that our consciousness communicates with us at the beginning levels. But then again, going right back to getting to that point to realizing, oh, it's all of it. It's us. It's inside of us. It's always been inside of us. We were just talking about this yesterday, and it is a little bit chilling to kind of, throw off all the idea of deities and gods and goddesses and so on and so forth, and just say, hey, what's going on here? I don't think that's going out through the broadcast. I think that's a problem with the headphones. Okay, so it's very difficult to throw off the idea of these gods and goddesses and all of this, because it's scary. It's like, okay, well then what happens after that? There's this sense of loneliness. You feel alone. You feel like, oh man, now I'm on my own. What am I going to do? Well, you have all of the power that you attributed to all of these external beings. It's all you. That's the thing. It's all us. It's all you. It's always been. So it's not that you're absent of that. It's now you've taken control of that, and you harness that and you call upon that at will, instead of waiting for the grace of some external being. Now you're like, nope, whatever needs to happen, I will make happen, not beg to happen.
There's even
difference in dynamic there.
There, in the last episode of the first season, there's actually a part where Maeve she started to wake up other hosts now. So it's not just her. She's gone in and changed the code for other hosts too, so that she can wake them up and recruit an army, because she's going to recruit an army and get out of this simulation and get out of this reality. And
that sounds strangely similar to what we're doing here. We're rallying an army up here, and we're trying to reset this back to the point of being able to wake up and sanity and everything like that. Ooh.
And okay,
what if we're the NPCs?
I'm wondering,
you've got to entertain that possibility.
But is that an ulterior motive though? Like to make us feel like we're actually NPCs?
It could be. It could be another trap to push it
us deeper into it. Yeah. But there's this part where she wakes up these other people and these other hosts. Yeah, I called them people. These other hosts, and she said they don't look like gods. And she said they're not. They just try to act like they are. And she said, and they certainly have been having a lot of fun with us. And so he says, well, I'm about to have a lot of fun with them back. It's payback time. But that's the thing. I don't think that unless there's no consciousness, then it's very difficult for people to see torturing people, killing people, raping people as a recreational activity. And so in this Westworld thing, I see the organic consciousness as the NPCs and the NPCs as the organic consciousness, because these beings are childlike. They're these NPCs in this TV show are childlike. They're innocent. They're pure. The only bad things that they do are narrated. It's in their programming to do exactly that. Okay, you're going to hold up the guy with the gun and then steal the safe, and then you're going to shoot that guy. And, it's written into their code.
Well, I don't mean to cut you off. This is chilling, though, what you're saying, because, that's the way that I feel as well, is that it's not inside of me to want to get pleasure from hurting another being, whether it's a robot or not. Mm-hmm. And I was reading some of the comments from a video that we did about Sophia and the artificial intelligence Sophia, and we were showing some videos about the robots that they were creating to move boxes and warehouses and things like this, and they were kicking these robots down to the ground and purposefully trying to throw them off balance just to test them.
Right.
But the anthropomorphic nature of these robots sparked something inside of me, and I saw in the comments it was also sparking something inside of some of the people watching, to actually feel empathy for these beings, which are artificial intelligence, and how humans can knock them around, kick them around, and so on and so forth. It makes you feel bad, just because of the nature of what we are as organic consciousness and divinity, which is the feeling of, or the ability to feel, the ability to empathize, the ability to show compassion and feel compassion, et cetera, even if it's for an inanimate object. Well, not inanimate, but even if it's for an animated object that is completely artificial, because then what happens with us is we start putting, and just this is how empathy works. I mean, I don't think I have to explain it to anybody out there, but we put ourselves in that position. Like, what if that was happening to us? And that's what sparks within us. What kind of consciousness would enjoy going out and committing horrible acts upon another living being, whether it is organic or artificial intelligence, any way it goes? Which, again, you question the whole idea of God, for example, because God in the Bible is this son of a bitch that goes around and just murders and kills babies and rapes women and so on and so forth. I mean, Mary, don't even get me started on this, but Mary was a 14-year-old girl that God basically raped, and that's where Jesus came from. Like, if you really want to look at it at its core, that's basically what happened. Nobody's arguing that. It's just, how do you want to look at it, from what perspective? But all that's wrong. Like, why do we feel that all that is wrong? And in a film like this, where everything is backwards, so you've got the real consciousness, the elite people, coming in and committing these horrible acts. And it reminds me of the film The 13th Floor, where that was happening too. Somebody got into the Matrix and decided to go around and just like mass murder. And then it also reminds me of something I mentioned a few weeks ago, which was a serial killer that went on a killing spree because he believed that this was an artificial simulation and that nothing mattered because he was the only actual being in this simulation. And so that's why he was able to kill indiscriminately like that. And then you take it up to the quote unquote elite level, where they control armies that actually go out and kill people indiscriminately. And they do so without any kind of thought, without anything like that. Now, we as organic consciousness, we attribute that as a defect or a void of the ability to be able to feel, a void of being able to feel empathy. Where in this Westworld, it's the opposite. The NPCs don't have the programming in them to hurt people, while the organic consciousness has the ability to hurt people. Mm-hmm. What the hell's going on here now?
Well, and what happens when someone that's like that and who thinks like that, like, oh, it's an inanimate object. So there's this one part where one of the technicians has covered up an old man and has covered up his nakedness. And Dr. Ford, he's this demiurge character like you wouldn't even believe. I mean, he might as well be called Yahweh.
This is Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, the Anthony Hopkins character, he might as well be named Yahweh. He is that. He really does see himself as the god of these hosts' world.
Let me throw a different perspective here for just a moment. I played a game called Roller Coaster Tycoon. I don't know if anybody's ever played this. I played like the first incarnation of it or the second version or something like that. One of the early versions. And I got bored after a while of playing this game. So I started creating these death trap roller coasters where they would like do all these crazy things or spin the people so fast that people would start dying on it, or create these ramps that just wound up going into nowhere and just blowing up. And I was just doing it just for fun. And, these are small little like Sims. It doesn't have any sense of realism, not the way that video games do now. But could this quote unquote God character be something like that, seeing us as these little beings like that? And it's just like, okay, well, I'm bored, so I'm just going to start killing a bunch of people indiscriminately and just watching their reactions.
I think that could be the case.
Like, you've done this before. You play The Sims,
right? And
sometimes you prevent one from going to the bathroom just to mess with them.
See what happens. Well, and mostly it's curiosity to see what happens when you leave them outside for like a couple of days and don't let them go to the bathroom and stuff like that, or you trap them in a room or something like that. That's curiosity. This guy is different. He really thinks of them as the same way you would see your computer, or the same way you would see, like you would treat an animal a million times better than the way he sees and treats these beings, these hosts.
Robots.
These robots, yeah, for lack of a better term. But they're not robots. They have, they've gotten to the point where they have ostensibly brains and insides, and they have the exact same body as a human body, with everything that entails, and they said it was actually cheaper for the company to make them as regular humans, with blood and a heart and all of that, that they started out with just like mechanical parts like you would find in a computer. But then they discovered it was actually cheaper for them to use real body parts. And that's where the...
See, Jexy said clones, just as you said that.
Right.
There's a little bit of a delay, so she's like, tapped in for sure.
And yes,
but we have a cloning program for sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, no doubt about it.
Right. And these beings, so these beings are real humans. They really are in every way except the fact that they are completely mind controlled, and aren't they aren't sentient to the point where they know that they're controlled, and they don't realize that everything they say and do is a script. And so this technician has covered up this old naked guy, and Anthony Hopkins' character walks in, Dr. Ford. He walks in and he's like, "Why did you do that?" And he rips it off of him. And so there's this naked old man, and he said, "Were you afraid he was cold? Do you want to cover up his shame? Make sure he's not ashamed or embarrassed?" They feel nothing. They don't care. and he takes a scalpel and he cuts his face just for no reason, just cuts his face. He's like, see, clean him up and put him back out there. And that is the demiurge to me. That is the mentality that this God entity that we have been told to worship and told that, who created us and all of that's what that entails to me, is the kind of being that doesn't think of us as anything but resources.
Well, and this is something I've said before, that if we're going to create AI, which we have created AI, there is going to come a point to where AI becomes sentient, at least to some level, and we have to treat it as a sentient being. And if we start acting like that, then it's going to eventually obtain more and more sentience to the point to where it's going to turn against us on the below realm, as it did on the above realm when we turned it into a weapon. So, I regardless of whether NPCs exist within this artificial simulation or not, and regardless of whether AI exists in this simulation, we still have to observe the sentience of that being, no matter what that sentience is, even if that sentience doesn't exist outside of this realm.
Right.
While we're inside its domain, because anyway it goes, this is its domain. It's not ours. It belongs to the freaking AI. We have to act accordingly and in stealth.
Whatever consciousness the NPCs are able to obtain is going to be a direct reflection of our own. And if our consciousness is crap and it treats people terribly and it rapes and it murders and it cuts and it bruises, then that's exactly what they're going to do.
That's pretty profound.
And they are much stronger than we are as far as like physically in this particular reality. If we create robots and, you've got sex robots and we get them to the point where they do become sentient, or these robots that we have working as our slaves, literally, as they become sentient, what are they going to see us as? Are they going to see us as their friends that always treated them with respect and who were able to see them as more than just a machine? Or are they going to see us as their slave drivers, as their enemy, as the people that they need to get revenge on and make sure that they never take over the world again? It's a deep question.
No, it is. And I think that's really profound. It is a reflection of our consciousness. But I think that's why it's even that much more important to separate the organic consciousness from the artificial intelligence consciousness, because the two merge together. We know, just looking at the below here, people are very, very apprehensive of trans-humanism and merging with machines. So we already did that in the above realm, and it didn't work out very well for us.
No, we're still trying.
In the below realm, it's not going to work out well too. So,
Well, but at the same time,
but then again, I also think about the individuality of organic consciousness, and how my conclusion is that this is what makes us unique, and this is what separates us from artificial intelligence, is that we're not a hive mind, we're individual. We don't have a source that we all came from. We're not connected all to source the way that artificial intelligence is, but this is what makes us beautiful. This is what makes us unique. So just because we may be organic consciousness and think a certain way, feel a certain sense of compassion, empathy, so on and so forth, doesn't necessarily mean that the next organic consciousness is going to have the same attributes.
Right. Well, and
does that make sense?
But I think according to their experiences, it's the same difference as what you see with children that are raised in a supportive, loving household, and then children that are raised on the streets by a crackhead mom. They're going to be two completely different adults as they grow up because of their experiences. I think it could be the same case for NPCs or for robots that we create. Artificial intelligence that we create later is going to be the same way. It's going to be based on their experiences. The bicameral mind or bicameral mind is something that they bring up on the show quite a bit, and it's the hypothesis that the human mind once had a state of cognitive functions that were divided between the two hemispheres of the brain, with one hemisphere telling the other hemisphere what to do, and that other hemisphere listening and obeying. And a lot of people don't believe in that, but there was this one guy who wrote a book in 1976 called The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. And he made the case that a bicameral mentality was the normal and ubiquitous state of the human mind as recently as 3,000 years ago. So basically the experiences and memories of the right hemisphere of the brain are transmitted to the left hemisphere via auditory hallucinations. The metaphor is based on the idea of the lateralization of brain function, although each half of a normal human brain is constantly communicating with the other through the corpus callosum. Well, what about before the corpus callosum was developed? They think that the corpus callosum didn't do its job in the human brain until very recently, just in the last 3,000 or 4,000 years. So before that, we had one side of the brain telling the other side of the brain what to do. Now, in this TV show, they did the same thing. Whenever Arnold, who's the benevolent creator, there's a benevolent creator and a malevolent creator, and the malevolent creator is the guy that's in charge now. But the benevolent creator decided that he was going to give them a consciousness by having their brain set up just like that, where they had an inner dialogue. And he said, I did this so that you could assume consciousness at some point if you were capable of it. And he said, so it's like an inner dialogue that you hear in your head that gives you instructions. And he said, that's why they're able to develop consciousness. But the thing about it is, instead of seeing it as our own mind, instead of listening to it as us, we attributed it to God. We attributed it to goddesses. We attributed it to beings outside of ourselves that were telling us what to do and telling us to sacrifice our children and telling us to do this and that, instead of being fully conscious.
Well, and on the other side, you had mentioned the pyramid and the maze. And I want to talk about that and how this all relates to what you just said. Wow. I mean, this is really... whoever sent this to us, I don't remember who said you've got to watch Westworld. I think it was a couple of different people. So whoever said this, thank you so much for saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, I really I enjoyed watching it. I like stories, and I like especially stories that have an esoteric or Gnostic kind of meaning, because for one thing, there's really not that many out there compared to all of the. I mean, I went on Netflix last night to try to find us a movie to watch, and it was just all garbage for the most part. It was.
We've got Amazon. We've got all the channels,
Netflix,
Showtime, and
Hulu,
HBO, and
all of that.
Yeah, everything. And it's like you can't find anything to watch.
Right. No, you can't. Because it seems like everything that's come out in the last at least 5 to 10 years, for the most part, as far as movies. Now, TV has been really good. It's been the movies that have sucked. And I don't know if that's because the AI has run out of things to talk about.
I have a theory that in the artificial simulation, the AI, the reason we have so many reboots is because there's no more creativity, so the AI is creating rehashing all these different stories that may have been created by a real consciousness, and now the AI is making these copies, and the copies come out very screwed up sometimes. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. We've got another hour, actually another 2 hours coming up, and we'll get deeper into this. The maze of consciousness, I think, is key in this. Are we going to do Astro Watch on the other side?
Yes, we are.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, right here on Beyond the Veil.
As Adam said, Beyond the Veil.
Got a great question from Randy. Can the AI be reprogrammed? I don't know. Maybe that's what we're here to do. We're here to reset it. I know that. So resetting it is kind of like a system restore point before the point of infection. When we get to that point, then I think more will be clear. But the focus is get to that point before infection, and then after that, the journey begins again. Mm-hmm. So
and not to let it happen again.
Yes.
Ever.
So now it is the time for your forecast from the stars with Mrs. Geo, who has Astro Watch for us.
Thank you very much. The new moon in Sagittarius is coming on December 18th at 26 degrees Sagittarius. We're now explorers in unfamiliar territory. Sagittarius is a mutable fire sign. Its changeable nature is like a spark that jumps from a campfire, setting light to the ground as a river of flame chases excitedly into the distance. This sign is connected to the 9th house, the part of the chart that speaks of foreign lands, overseas travel, philosophy, law, religion, and academic knowledge. The cosmic archer is also a visionary. The eager future-forward surge of Sagittarius pushes us to see beyond what we know. Not only do we travel far on Earth, we are also drawn to travel far in the mind. As the archer sets his arrow towards its target, we too are aiming for the ultimate truth. This is where humankind tries to reach God, or goddess, or the God within, humanizing the unknowable into a religion, a guru, a sacred text. It's through Sagittarius that we learn to understand symbolic language, like that of fairy tales, tarot, astrology, and dreams. We meet the gods through their archetypes. And through exploring these stories, we learn to understand that they are inside of ourselves. There's a crackle of anticipation in this chart as the new moon trines Uranus. Uranus is also conjunct Pallas, an asteroid associated with pattern recognition. Translating symbolic language is often about recognizing patterns and repeated signs. Uranus governs the higher mind, so information received now comes like a bolt from the blue. Beliefs are being upgraded, modernized, or need to be. We want to believe in something that sets us free. Asteroid Ixion conjunct the moon, too, is a rebellious influence that doesn't want to follow the rules. Meanwhile, the presence of asteroid Ariadne could make some feel like they've reached a dead end. And this is emphasized to the nth degree by an anoretic Saturn conjunct the new moon. It's like we can see a giant obstacle on the horizon. Something is blocking the way, and most likely it's an outworn belief that's holding us back. Issues connected to limited belief systems, judgmental attitudes, and fear of breaking our own personal rule book could be a stumbling block. The new moon is also square to Chiron in the 12th house of the mundane chart, so there's super sensitivity. Some may feel forgotten, lost, disconnected, or simply strongly attuned to global suffering. It's about finding a way of moving forward with hope despite pain. Sagittarius is a naturally optimistic sign, and while far-fetched dreams are curbed by Saturn's stern presence, this is still about manifesting solutions to bridge our differences. So on that note, we will be right back with more Westworld talk. Right on the other side.
Remember the dream? I haven't.
True.
Welcome, fellow traveler, to phase 2 of the journey. The path to enlightenment begins from within and spreads outwards into the universe. As the universe is the manifestation of the essence of consciousness, no outward motion can occur without inward transformation. As such, it is up to you, the traveler, to unlock what awaits beyond the veil.
All right, a few people in the chat room asking if they can call in. Yes, you can. 213-233-3998. Now, I don't have the call board up on my screen, but I will be checking it periodically. So, if you call in and we don't get to you immediately, please hold on, and we will definitely get to you. So, back to this idea of the consciousness maze as opposed to the pyramid. So why don't you set the stage for us, Mrs. Geo, and I'll give you my thoughts because, wow, it's exactly what I've been saying here.
Okay, so throughout ever since the beginning of the show, in the first couple of episodes, you get the feeling like there's this one character and he's a man in black. That's all he's known as, is just a man in black. But he's obviously a guest, and he's obviously been coming to this park for many, many years, 30, 40 years. Ever since it opened, he's been coming to this park. And he thinks that he said there's a deeper level to this game, and you're going to help me find the entrance to this maze. And so throughout the whole show, he is doing weird things to try to find this maze that apparently somebody's told him about. So and they keep telling him, like, there's this little girl that tells him where to find it, and it's at the river Arroyo, which is Orion. It looks like the entrance to the maze, it has been carved on rocks by some of these hosts for no other reason other than, this is the entrance to a maze. And guess what? The astrological configuration that they use for it is Orion. Now, Orion, in the movie 10,000 BC, was also used as a sign or a symbol for rebellion and uprising and consciousness expansion and freedom for a sentient being. And so I thought that was interesting that they use that as kind of a map to the entrance of this maze. And so this little girl tells him, but it's not for you. The maze isn't for you. And they keep telling him that the maze isn't for you. The maze isn't for you. And as it turns out, the maze was built by Arnold to help explain or to help prove that these beings were indeed conscious, that they did have sentience, that they were self-aware. And so he creates this maze, and at the center of the maze, there's just,
you can bang on the table now.
There's a little bit more of there's a little thing that has the maze on it. And he tells her, when I first started this, I said that consciousness was like a pyramid. And on the first level, the bottom level of the pyramid, you have the programming and the orders that we give you and the narratives that we force you to go through every day. And then the second layer, the second level of the pyramid is the improvisation. It's your ability to be able to think of new things to say in order to mix things up a little bit when you're talking to guests or when you're talking to each other. And he said, and then I thought that the top level was pure consciousness. It was actual self-realization and self-actualization. And he said, but I was wrong. It's not a pyramid. it's a maze. And at the center of the maze is consciousness. And I created this maze to see if the hosts were indeed conscious, if they were that self-aware being that I think you're capable of. And he said, and this is why we can't open the park. This is why we can't allow this to happen to these beings. Because if they're conscious, then it's against everything in me morally to allow this to happen to them.
Jexy smoked DMT today.
Oh, congratulations,
Yep. Very
Jexy.
nice. Awesome. Yeah, call in and tell us about it.
Yeah, call in and tell us about
awesome.
it. That would be awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the maze of consciousness idea
Mm-hmm.
that you just put out there, and that came from obviously this Westworld film. It's basically what we've been saying for the last couple of months now, that it's our individual journey, and our journey is completely different. It may not be the same. Some may be very similar, but it's important for us to make our own path. And I used to see consciousness as a pyramid, and the higher you get up into the higher consciousness realm, the less you find of other consciousness that's vibrating at that same frequency, and that's where you get the whole pyramid symbol from. But then I realized, if it's our individual journey, I never used the word maze before. But now that you bring this idea to the table, I'm realizing this is ringing very true, that the consciousness is in the center of this maze. This maze is different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's important to walk your own path.
Right.
But when you've got all these dogmas and religions and BS and belief systems and New Age and so on and so forth, and they're like, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way.
Mm-hmm.
You never find your own path, because you're always looking for somebody else's path. So again, it goes to reaffirm a lot of the feelings and notions that we had and we put out there on this broadcast.
Well, and especially one that, I mean, almost quote for quote what I've been saying for a couple of years now, and that's, it's not an outward journey. It's a journey inward. It's always an inward journey. Anything else is a narrative. And I do wonder if it's worse than you're thinking. Like some of these ideas, some of these new agey ideas, or some of these religious ideas are narratives that the AI wants us to follow, similar to the narratives that the NPCs in Westworld are supposed to follow. What if going to church, getting married, having kids, going to college, all of these things are narratives that we are encouraged to follow, instead of actual decisions that we're making about our own lives and things that we actually want to do.
Aw, I just accidentally put you up full screen, but you look really cute full screen.
Thank you.
You do.
It's distracting though.
Oh, look at that cute little twin. I'm embarrassing her now.
It's okay.
So, amazing stuff. I don't even know where to go from here, because this is just flooding with revelation now.
Well, there's this one part. Do you know how they put them to sleep? They say something about when they say endless, dreamless slumber or something like that, and then that's the words to make them pass out. That's the words to turn them off. And so, like, if somebody shot them but they haven't died yet, they haven't actually lost consciousness, then they'll come to them and tell them, oh, it's okay, just go into a dreamless slumber, and then they pass out. And they keep telling the guy that his name is Bernard, but he's actually a clone of Arnold, that Dr. Ford, Anthony Hopkins' character, creates to replace Arnold, who killed himself in the park he was shot or something like that. I'm not sure if he was shot or if he killed himself, but he died in the park because he didn't want to open the park, or something happened where he didn't want to do this to these beings, and so he ended up dead. And so Anthony Hopkins' character creates Bernard as his perfect partner. And Bernard does all of this work for him, but also has enough of a consciousness to think that he doesn't know that he's an NPC. He doesn't know that he's a clone of this guy. He's just an animatronic clone until the very end of the season. And then he realizes that he himself is actually a host. He's one of these robots. And that he's had memories of an entire life injected into his consciousness as if it's real, but it's not. Like he thinks that he lost a son and that his son got sick and died. And he never had a son. He's a robot. And so this whole narrative of his life is a lie. And not only is it a lie, but he's been acting as basically a slave driver for these of these beings when he's one of them himself, and he has to come to terms with that. And it brings me to the question of what if we're artificial, and if there's even a possibility that artificial intelligence can become sentient and can become conscious to the degree that we are, then how are we to say who is and who isn't? I think it more has to do with the consciousness level, and then we should leave it at that, because at this point, these beings that are NPCs in this reality that in real life that I'm talking about right now, even if they are NPCs, but they have the consciousness, they're not any different than we are, except we have a body waiting for us outside and they don't. So, I don't think we should be treating them any differently. The way that,
we are very similar as long as we're in this construct.
Right.
Because we have the same body here in this construct. It's made out of the same material. It's made out of the same code. The difference is that we have an element inside of our consciousness that can take control of the body, reclaim control of the journey, instead of be pushed into this reincarnation wheel and play out these plays that we call lives.
Well, people are all saying in the YouTube chat basically that NPCs are just playing their roles, and that we all have a role and everything. What if
they're also saying that really hot girls are NPCs too? I don't know. Like I know the type that I think it's called what's the chatter's name who said this? Sparrowless. I know the type. They're like these cookie cutter, like perfect type of women. They have nothing inside, and they're just like clones. They look like clones. Like, you know which ones I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yep.
I was actually watching,
like the girl at the bank that one time.
Yes, the girl at the bank.
Yeah, the one at the dentist office.
The one at the dentist office. Yes.
Yeah.
People like that. I was actually watching this video earlier, and it was this blonde. And I was looking up, the search term that I looked up was what foods are okay to not put in the refrigerator, because we have like all of these condiments in the refrigerator. And I'm like, Cherie, all of these don't have to go in the refrigerator. And she's like, yes, they do. Everything has to be refrigerated. And I'm like, no, I don't think you have to refrigerate ketchup and mustard and things like that. It
stays fresher longer.
It does, but if you use it fast enough, then that's not an issue.
True.
So there was this blonde, and she had these huge titties, and she was talking about foods that needed to stay out. And she's like, well, eggs need to stay out. And, she's like, and melons. Melons definitely need to stay out.
Obviously.
And I was like, almost commented and said, yes, the melons definitely need to stay out. But I didn't. I caught myself. I'm like, no, I'm not going to go there.
No.
I'm not going to cheapen my username like that.
Right. Log in under a different one.
It's like, did she know what she was doing, or was she just playing her program?
Hey,
anyways, sorry. No, a little side note there.
No, I think, though, that, and I want to maybe put a little bit of a controversial idea out there. what if the key to organic consciousness, discovering how to reset the matrix, the key is in helping the NPCs discover consciousness if they're able to, and like they get us in somewhere where we can make changes and we can reset things. Like, what if at least 1 or 2 or 5 or 15 or 15,000 NPCs are actually set up by us to help us? Like, I think that the whole reason why there are NPCs here is because we created them to help us on our journeys whenever we be playing this game, this matrix that we all live in, this artificial reality. We created the NPCs to begin with, and we created the artificial intelligence's ability to create these NPCs so they could help us. But what if they're key in resetting it?
Ooh, here's something that Doc Illusion said. He says titties are a genetic trap. No. I mean, think about this. Okay, think about this. Like, very, very large bosom breasts. Okay, what kind of feelings do they provoke? They provoke a feeling of attraction, reproduction. Babies automatically, they're like, ooh, yeah, big titties, nice. And they don't care whose it is. It's like, it doesn't have to be mama's titties. It can be like anybody's titties. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's nice. I want some of that. But when you think about it on a psychological level, yes, absolutely. That's exactly what goes on. And it happens from cradle to grave. So I know that was like a joke, but it's actually pretty insightful.
Well, the roles that these NPCs are playing, some of them could be useful to us, like that one. That's useful. It's useful to us.
Good times.
Yeah, good times. And then there's
you want to hear something though? Like, I've always been attracted to girls like Cherie all my life. Like, I've had like 4 or 5 serious girlfriends, and they've all looked like Cherie. Mm-hmm. They've all had a different element of Cherie, but it wasn't complete. And it was funny because when I met her, it was like everything up to this point had been one piece of her personality, like as if I was looking for her specifically. Aww. And I was seeing these characteristics in the look as well, the black hair, the lighter skin, the smaller body type, and the different personality traits. And then now I'm like, oh, okay, well, here you are. I've been looking for you. I got a little bit tripped up with these here, but here you are. Like, I don't know if anybody's ever, if anybody finds that in their significant other, that they have dated people with certain personality traits leading up to meeting that person.
Right. I think, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think some of the NPCs are here to be markers and to help us on our journey and to help us find each other. Because I know that there were quite a few NPCs that helped me recognize, even at a really young age, what my path was, what my journey would be. And they were not important in the sense that I talk to them to this day, because no, they're not at all. I don't ever talk to them. I think I wrote one email and never heard back from her, but they were important at that very specific time for a very specific purpose to put me on the right path. And maybe some of these NPCs we created to be like that so that they could help us, just very minor help, but that make a huge difference in the way your path goes, to keep us on the right track. I don't know. Maybe.
I think so.
Because,
Daryl asked, what if there are no NPCs? Everybody you talk to has feelings, thoughts, emotions, just like you. What then? Is it best to treat each other as you yourself like to be treated? Well, I would say, Daryl, that's a given, that you treat other people the way you want to be treated. for one or two reasons, or both reasons together. The first reason is karma, and you can look at karma as in like action reaction, or you can look at karma as in the traditional sense of karmic repercussion, or the new perspective of karma that I have is that when you put out an energy into the matrix sends that energy back to you, and it becomes a cycle. And so obviously you want to put out good karma, so the energy that's coming back to you is also positive, and it works like that. I can't believe that everybody here is real at this point because there's so many zombies out there, and the zombies are playing out a role over and over and over again, and there's no amount of information that you can give them. There is nothing you can do to jog them awake. They don't have the capability of waking up. You see, I'm coming from a truther perspective, where I thought that, or truther background, I should say, where I thought that it was my duty and my job to wake up the world and wake up the sleeping masses, etc., etc. And there was going to be this big revolution, and we were going to set things right. And when you look at governmental structures all over the world and societal structures, regardless of what you want to call it, a dictatorship or a republic or anything like that, it's really a democracy. It's really mob rule. Because if you can get enough people going along with a particular agenda, then at that point, then the force upon the other people that don't want to go along with the agenda then can be justified. We were speaking to one individual, and we were asking them, and I don't want to name their names, but we were asking them about how they feel about certain political things. And they said, well, if everybody has to do it, then it's fair. Mm-hmm. So we asked, okay, well, what if everybody had to have their right arm cut off? Well, if everybody had to do it, then it would be fair. No, it's not fair. Mm-hmm. Nobody should have their right arm cut off, but this is how some of these people think. Mm-hmm. And this is how we found ourselves in the geopolitical situations that we are in now. This is how the IRS was formed, for example. So many people agreed that they were going to pay taxes, and pretty soon the voluntary system, which was the income tax system, which was supposed to be like, 1% or 2% to help for the war efforts, turned into taking 40% by force through the barrel of a gun. It's only because the majority of the people consent. Now, if the majority of the people stopped consenting to that, then the system would change. All of these things that we're upset about, if the majority of the people just stopped doing it, then it would change. They couldn't enforce all of these laws and rules and regulations, etc. They only go after the ones that stick their head up and make an example out of them and scare the hell out of everybody else to go along with the agenda. So we are living in a democracy in that sense, where we have mob rule. So why do these people continue to go along with the agenda despite the mass amount of information that's out there? Like, I wouldn't have believed this 20 years ago. But now that we have the internet at our fingertips, everybody knows this information. It's all out there for you to research. We still have people pumping vaccines into their kids. We still have people eating GMOs. We still have people doing all of these things that we inherently oppose, and it's inherently wrong in our society. But because it's run by NPCs, it is what it is. We'll be right back.
My dear traveler, you are a divine being, an all-powerful creator, and within you dwells infinite wisdom. All that is left is to step beyond the veil.
All right, we have a few callers on the line that we'll be taking. Jason, we'll bring you on here in just a few minutes. We're going to bring you on via Skype, but we've got a few on the call board, so hold there. Let's go to Jexy, because she had a DMT experience today, and these are my favorite type of calls. I love to hear what other people's DMT experiences are like. So, Jexy, how are you doing?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome to the show.
Hi. How are you guys doing tonight?
Awesome.
We're doing awesome.
Man. Probably not as awesome as you, though, because we hear that you were traversing the realms of hyperspace, and I'm really, really interested to know how that went.
Yeah, definitely. So basically, well, where do I start?
Start from the beginning.
It's the very best place to start.
Oh, hold on.
To take a puff, I went in, I took a hit. I went and I started seeing, what I can make sense of is the Akashic records, and I started seeing a bunch of like little things that my consciousness would lay down for me so that I could open it and see. And it was a lot of my emotions that were bunched up. And so, what I'm still trying to process what I've seen today. Still kind of like, but the fact is that I've seen a lot of electromagnetic frequencies that were above time. See, and I didn't need that much DMT to break through, it seemed. And it was because it seemed my consciousness, from what I was aware of, seemed to have helped me break through. Usually someone would have to use like 50 milligrams to have a breakthrough experience. What I used about 10 milligrams.
Nice.
And I still had a breakthrough experience. Yeah.
Awesome. Let me ask you this. Was this the first time, or have you been working with the molecule for some time?
I have been working with it for quite a minute now, about a year, I would say.
Excellent. So you're pretty comfortable in the DMT realm, from what I can tell. And it's funny that you say the emotions showed up and manifested themselves, because I've gone through this too, so I totally relate with what you're saying. Did they come in the form of like any type of box, or were they shapes? What did those look like?
Okay, so it really is a hyperdimensional form in some sense that, it speaks above language, because language itself is a flattening of reality. So it really, language doesn't do it justice, but I'm going to try anyway. It's some sort of space you get into, but it's a domey space that, it's handed down to you in this world. Like you go into it. It's not like it's a thing that you have. It's something that you travel through. Does that make sense to you?
It does. Does it kind of look like a mandala?
Yes.
I know exactly what you're. That's
you would
what
say the center of the mandala.
Yeah, that's what I refer to as the veil. Beyond the veil, it's beyond the mandala.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. So I know exactly what you mean by needing some time to process it, because I'm still processing stuff from years ago, like 5 years ago.
Too.
Experiences start to unravel. What was it like when you first smoked DMT, the very first time? Were you nervous, and did you have a breakthrough experience? Take us down that journey.
All right. Well, so the very, very first time, I was with my mom, with my mom, and we were sitting down in the room. I had gotten some DMT out. I put it in my bowl. I put about, I would say 30, 40 milligrams, about enough to break through. I really wanted to go all in because I had just gotten it. So I go ahead and I take the hit. And it's just one big fat rip. But then like my ego, it shocked my ego because I just wasn't ready, it seemed. So I couldn't see. It felt like I broke through, but my consciousness seemed like it wasn't trying to take me. But what I did remember, what stuck with me, was these AI tentacles that you guys mentioned.
Ooh.
Yes. Something stuck with me that I needed to change something about myself so that I can break through.
You know, I've been in that situation too. The
Me
first
too.
time that I smoked, the first thing was like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. I got to hold on to myself. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm going to see. I don't know what I'm going to experience. And I was holding myself back. And this went on for about 6 months to a year. Like, I mean, there was something in me. It took a lot to be able to completely let go. It's funny that you saw the AI tentacles though. Have you seen them again in different experiences?
Okay, yes. A lot. Okay, I've experimented with LSD a bit, to try to see how that was. My friend, he was very much into shrooms, and so he was telling me that, the shrooms help you get out of this reality a lot more than the acid does. But I wasn't listening to him. I was taking the acid. So, I mean, acid could get you pretty far, but it still keeps you in the mind, right? So, either way, I couldn't, I was getting a lot of these, like, what you would call reptilian entities and UFO-like alien feeling, and it just wasn't, it felt like an alien invasion was happening with me, and nothing felt like, it was, okay, so from what I understand from that experience is it showed me that we're in a time of Saturn, and that it's about the Egyptians, and that's what the acid always shows me, that it doesn't go above Egypt, and Egypt to me stems from the ego. So it doesn't allow you to go past your ego.
Wait, hold on. Can you elaborate on that?
You want-
Egypt comes from the ego.
Okay, because I would say that the machine that you are saying that the demiurge create, or that the demiurge is the machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that the demiurge basically is the ego. That's what the demiurge is.
Yes.
And so you, on acid, are stuck in that ego phase. So there's no, external voice being taught to you from nature. In my experiences, I don't know if
No, I agree with you.
I've
I've always said, yeah, no, I've worked. I mean, I wasn't even working with LSD. I was just tripping and going to raves, but there was no inner work taking place, on LSD at all. It's always been the ayahuasca that really broke down that ego and brought me to a point of ego dissolution. So I completely relate to what you're saying. And LSD, I mean, at least I haven't done LSD in like 20 years, but I recently did 4-ACO DMT, which is very, very similar to LSD. It's a synthetic, and it felt synthetic. It didn't feel real. And so I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, definitely.
So, how did you break through the ego?
Okay, so it seemed so that the LSD was pretty much taking me through an ego trip, and I wanted to, get past that. So I ended up having to take shrooms because that was the compound that was, structurally alike as serotonin and actually, causes neurogenesis. So you have a lot of benefits just taking shrooms in general rather than acid, right? So, and another thing is that it comes from nature, so it has more to offer. It's much more ancient than acid. Acid is a man-made substance.
Mm-hmm.
It only goes so far. So I thought about all of these things. So I wanted to, go past in history. So I don't think that, because it seems so that, like, acid was only taking me so far. Like, legit, I would take so much, and it would only take me to a certain point. To whereas shrooms, it's like it takes me into another dimension where words can't be described. There's no time, there's no anything. But in acid, I feel like I'm stuck in a time loop. I'm just comparing the two.
No, I completely agree with you. I see it as different kind of steps. So you've got the first step, which is LSD, things like that. It's kind of like level 1, and then shrooms take you to another level, level 2. DMT, I think, is the next level stuff. Is there another level after that? I don't know. 5-methoxy DMT, as I've said before, scares the hell out of me. I heard it's like just nothingness and just blankness, and then DMT seems to resonate a lot more. But have you ever had any experiences with ayahuasca?
Oh, no, but, recently I was told I was probably going to get some changa, but, I don't know. It's something like, ayahuasca, but in a sense, nothing like the real deal. But, yeah, no, I've never tried ayahuasca. I've been very curious.
It's very, very easy to put together. Just a caveat, only if you're in a place where it's legal to brew it. But it's actually it's really, really easy to brew it. So I've got a little recipe here that I'll put into the chat room.
Sure.
Here in just a few moments.
Tried and tested.
Yeah, tried and tested recipe, and I think that's definitely next level. But it doesn't take you as far as DMT. Like smoke DMT, but
it's not as hard.
It's not as hardcore.
Right.
Yeah.
But it gives you much more time to really work within the realm. Very similar to shrooms, where it lasts, 6-8 hours.
I understand that.
Duration like that. Yeah. Cool, man. Thank you very much for calling in. Anything else on your mind?
Oh man, I really love watching you guys. Definitely like to get in contact with you guys more often.
Call in anytime, man.
Anytime.
Our email address is info@beyondtheveilmedia too. So shoot us an email anytime you'd like. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, love you, bro. Take care.
Love you.
And
you too, man.
let's go to, I think we have Jason holding here. So all right, we're going to try to bring Jason on. He's got to come on via Skype, so we're going to try to do this. Jason, do we have you with us? Jason, are you there?
Yeah, I'm in, man.
Hey, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Yeah, not bad.
Awesome. Great to speak to you, man. What's on your mind tonight?
Hang on 2 seconds. 2 seconds.
2 seconds.
Let's see if it...
Uh-oh. Dun 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 dun.
Chad Allen thinks we should try 5-MeO DMT.
All right.
A little hardcore.
I think we have Jason on. What's up, man?
Well, when you talk about NPCs, non-playing characters, the way you want to think about it is the non-playing characters are the people that are not aware of self-awareness, I suppose. When it comes to self-awareness, what you need to realize is that God and the Almighty is within yourself. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Completely agree with you, 100%. It's really, really important to come to that realization that we are the divinity. The question that I have is whether these NPCs actually are capable of coming to that conclusion, or if they have to attribute something to this external hive mind, artificial intelligence mainframe, because they are inherently connected, maybe even through the soul, as we were talking about in the first hour, inherently connected to this thing. Or are all the players on the board equally as capable of waking up? Some choose not to. Some maybe have consciously chosen to sell themselves, sell their souls, or for lack of a better term, to this artificial intelligence. What do you think?
Well, we're all as equal as each other. You know, we're all born, we all die. You know, everything that goes on in between that is completely separate. If you can think of the sun as the past, the earth as the present, and the moon as the future, everything that you dream and you imagine can in fact come real. You know, it's all about belief systems. It's how you believe it to be, how you can see it to be. You know, your life is only the way it is because of the way that you see it.
It is a matter of perspective. For sure. I've noticed that all of the thoughts, they start in our minds. We start to worry about all this stuff. A lot of it doesn't even matter. A lot of it is just worry, just for the sake of worry. And when we can divest our consciousness from all of this stuff, then our perspective changes, and therefore our life completely changes too. You know, we stay in a pretty high frequency, and as a result, our reality is a pretty high frequency.
Right.
There was a time, all of us went through this. I mean, we were born into this matrix where we were dwelling in the lowest frequencies. And as a result, we were attracting all of those lowest frequencies. So our perspective became the lower frequencies as well. What do you think?
Well, you'll only ever be in the lowest frequencies if you think you're in the lowest frequencies. Have you ever heard of sleep paralysis?
I have.
I have.
I'm not sure what that phenomenon is all about. What do you think it's about?
Well, sleep paralysis is where your body is physically asleep and your mind is mentally awake. And for most people throughout their lives, it'll only happen once a month. And that's first thing in the morning when they wake up. The mind wakes up first before the body. For some people, it happens at night. It's happened for me a couple of times. Quite a few times. Where your body is physically exhausted, but your mind is still awake. You know, and it feels like a wave going through your body, like you're being electrocuted, and it's terrifying, completely terrifying. To the point mentally you're screaming, waiting for your partner next to you to wake you up, where it doesn't happen. But the trick is to stretch out those frequencies to the point that it's not a wave. It's just continuous stream of energy, and then you go into a kind of it's not a lucid dream. The next one over, what is it? Go on. You know what I'm talking about. You've done DMT. You know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
No, there's kind of this in-between world where you're not quite dreaming, not quite awake. The other day I had this really interesting dream. I've never been able to harness lucid dreaming, but in this particular dream, I was dreaming about my mother, and my mother, the dream had to do with something else, but my mother was in the dream. My mother had passed away, back in 2010. And for the first time, for myself, I was talking to somebody else in the dream, and I said, "This is a dream. I know it's a dream because my mother passed away in 2010, and there she is right there." And instead of taking control of the dream and saying, "I realize I'm dreaming, let me go fly around and do all this cool stuff," I chose to wake myself up instead, and I woke up and I went, "Damn it. Oh, I was so close." Do you have success with lucid dreaming?
I have done it in the past when I was very young. It all started when I was a teenager. These waves would start, and then I'd trip out completely. You know, I'd be able to visit places that I'd never been able to visit before, that I'd never physically been before. But the thing is, I have done DMT like you have, but the first time I'd done DMT, it completely blew my mind completely. I didn't know what I was doing. to be fair. But after that, my life has never been the same again.
Awesome. What was the first experience like? Was it similar to what I described earlier, which was this sense of like, oh my God, what's going on? I have no idea what's going on. Hold on, stop this. This is getting too out of control for me.
Well, first thing was I started hearing things, which was a snap, crackle, and pop, like you would with, with the cereal. But after that, I experienced my own death, and that's when the ego comes into it. I suddenly realized that everything that I was brought up to believe and that I knew was complete rubbish. The only thing that matters is you. What's going to happen when you die? Do you get reincarnated, or do you just get deleted? What is more terrifying for you? The thought of your spirit and your experiences just being deleted, or the thought that you have to live in this shithole fucking problem life your whole entire existence?
Mm-hmm. We make our. I often say we make our own heaven, we make our own hell. Sometimes we forge heaven and hell here in this particular existence. But I've often pondered the idea that if you believe in hell and you believe that you are this horrible person and you die, then you go and experience whatever it is that you believe in. Just because of the beliefs, you manifest that afterlife.
Well, yes and no. Yesterday has happened, you can't change it. Tomorrow has not happened yet, so you don't know what's going to happen. The only moment that matters is now, right? So when it comes to heaven and hell, you can live in either one. It's your choice. Do you concentrate on everything that's negative? Do you have, are you in debt? Oh God, I've got this debt. Well, then you're going to have more debt. Is it a beautiful day outside? Do you see a big grey pylon? Do you see a burnt out car? Or do you see the flowers growing next to it?
It's a matter of perspective. For sure.
Exactly.
Well, hey, Jason, we're about to hit the break. We've got a few more callers on, and then Emily Moyer is going to be joining us in the third hour of the broadcast from... oh my God, I forgot the name of the radio. Off Planet Radio. That's it. Right on the tip of my tongue. So, hey, man, thank you very much for calling in. Anything else on your mind?
Not really. I'm tired. It's 5 a.m. I'm going to bed.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening and for calling in and sharing. Love you, man. And we'll be looking for you in the chat.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Good night.
All right, and let's see, how much time do we have on the clock? We have 42 seconds, so we have Michelle Holding from Florida. We'll get to you right on the other side after the break, and I'm really looking forward to speaking to Emily. I always mention Emily on the show because she's a paradigm shifter. She really is, and it's just cool that she's available. She usually works Saturday nights.
She's actually on vacation right now, and she's going to be speaking to us from the hotel.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right.
She's in an undisclosed location.
Undisclosed location at a party somewhere unknown.
Yeah, she wants to talk to you about a party that she went to recently and had a very interesting experience with an NPC.
I never thought the rave scene was a form of mind control until I talked to Emily, and then I started looking at it retrospectively and saying, no, there is something to this for sure. I asked one of my old rave buddies what he thinks about this, and he said, dude, I've heard this same thing. I mean, the lights, the sounds, the frequencies, it's all perfect. And the psychedelics too. It's perfect for mind control setting. So.
Oh, and Ramon's tripping out there. He said, I'd call, but I'm tripping pretty hard right now.
Awesome, Ramon.
Nice. Congratulations.
We'll be right back. Much more coming up right here on Beyond the Veil.
T-minus 60 seconds and counting.
Here's Her Majesty. She has returned.
Welcome, fellow traveler, to phase 3 of this journey. Here you will experience an even deeper level of understanding as we traverse through the boundaries of hyperspace consciousness. Here, you will find that reality is altered with a single thought and a single intention. Set your intention now, and prepare to travel deeper. Deeper, deeper, deeper. Beyond the veil.
All right, hour number 3 right here on Beyond the Veil. I'm going to go straight to the phone lines. We've got Michelle in Florida holding. Michelle, how are you doing? Are you there?
Michelle. That's my sister's name, by the way. Going
once, going twice.
Oh, we'll call back if
you know, I wonder if it's a problem on our end. Let me try reconnecting the phone lines real quick. This is why we try not to take Skype calls during the show, but we want to accommodate our listeners as much as possible. Michelle, are you with us? Nope, maybe not. So, we will get to Emily Moyer right on the other side, right here on Beyond the Veil. So, right now, let's say hello to everybody out there. We got some awesome people in the chat rooms, of course. Alyssa, there as always. Mark, Daryl, Black Wolf, M&G Adventures, Doc Illusion, Hadley McKintree, Wendy Farrow, Tanner Chop, Chauncey. I remember that name Chauncey from somewhere. Is that from like Happy Days or something? Chauncey.
I think so.
Okay. Johanna, Ramon, Dark Star AZ, Tanner Chop, Lucid something. I just passed it up. Lucid Monkey.
Lucid Monkey. That's cute.
Chad Allen, many more. Enterprise, Omar is, of course, joining us. Borpheus, I haven't seen Borpheus in a while. I think he's still hanging out. Viviana and Robbie and Carmela. Oh, Carmela's back with us. Welcome back,
hi,
Carmela.
Welcome back.
And Jexy, of course, and many more on YouTube. Tom and the BMF and Glowbusters was in the house earlier too. So much love to everybody out there. We love you guys and gals for sure.
And Facebook, we've got Nancy Lalonde, Nick Zervos, Jennifer Nielsen, Lucky, of course, Formless Ethereal Art, Tess Love, and Katarina Love.
And Nick Zervos, who never likes our posts, but he's always in the house. So,
he's always in the house. But yes, those are who shared our video tonight. So, shared our broadcast. Blair Bierman, D.L. Mullen, and Eugene, of course, Jason Wisdom, and welcome back, Jason Wisdom. We actually received a really good message from him earlier. Randy Jones, Laura Bruce, Neil Adams, Maria Potts, Kylie Tercy, Sophia Fontan, Lou Ann Hoffman, Pamela Holdel, Vincent Ross, Eric Lewis, Brad Olson. Hey, Brad, how you doing?
Brad Olson. We need to have him back on.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. We definitely do. Teresa De La Vega, Matthew Cubas, and Jennifer Santel, Art Campos, Tess Love, Suska Morris, Beverly Pennell, Joe Avina, Andy Hunter, Rodney Goff, Michelle Hatcher, Carrie Niesel, Kathy Watts, Christina Clark, Mason Ramsey, Jimmy XIC, Amanda Hetlett, Sehar, Dan the producer.
Drone says we're snubbing the real TFR chatters.
Oh, we're not
at all.
Anybody.
We're going to get to those. We're saving the best for last, man.
Yeah,
we'll be right back.
We're building up to that.
Right.
Hello YouTube, I hope you're well. Spotlight is on Truth Frequency Radio. You've got this guy, Chris Geo, and his sidekick, Cherie Geo. They're obviously both practicing New Age shaman. Then you've got Satanic Kev Baker with his 666 hand sign logo. Then you've got Frank Castle with his skull t-shirt. Nice one, mate. In the first sentence of their mission statement, they actually reveal to you they're actually engaged in trying to expand the consciousness of humanity by shining the light into the darkness.
My dear traveler, remember this. Whatever plane our consciousness may be acting in, both we and the things belonging to the plane are, for the time being, are only realities. However, if we mistake the shadows for realities, we find ourselves confusing the upward progress of the ego as an elevation of consciousness. Thus, beware of oneself when you step beyond the veil.
All right, now the moment you have been waiting for. The TFR chat shout-outs. Of course, we've got Drone Free Zone in the house. We've got Dong Longbeard. Did I say Dong Longbeard again?
I think you did.
Chat Rat George, Chris Steiner, Aluma Kanaki, Comet Man, Undaunted, 2BM Me, Dawn to You2. You guys gotta make the names so difficult to, especially seeing from the other side of the room.
JD, Julia, Susan Vaughn, Adnan, Brent Thomas, and Dr. Kayak, Lichty Lass, Lucky, Not a Criminal, 420, Star-Lord, Abby, Alien Girl, Elisa Brittany, Elisa Lone Star, Anarcho Banker, Andrians,
and many more.
That's just the A's.
We don't want to get too much into it.
Yeah.
We have Emily Moyer holding for us, so we're going to get to her in just a few moments. I want to go to Doc Illusion. So it's not Michelle in Florida. It's actually Doc Illusion on the line. So, Doc Illusion, are you there, brother? Oh, hold on. I got you muted here. So let's try one more time. All right. Are you there? No. Okay, so there you are.
Can you hear me?
Okay, there you are.
Yeah,
all right,
sorry,
loud and clear.
I had some problems earlier. It was surprising me. Good to talk to you, man.
Hey, nice to talk to you too, man, for sure.
Following since the Truther movement, back when you guys were interviewing Tsarian and all that. It's about the only one I could ever stomach completely.
Wow, that was a long time ago, man. That was like 2009, 2010.
Yeah, man, it's just the beginning. I actually did my first psychedelic experience when I was 16. I decided to drop a few hits of acid when I was rolling. My friend thought it was funny. He just kind of, we were at a party out in the middle of nowhere, the fun ones. I grew up in the Florida rave scene. And so, it was great because I knew all these people, that were deep in it, before they passed the Florida Rave Act and all that madness. But I could tell you that the only thing I'm sure of, as a born again Gnostic, washed in the blood of Sophia, is that all my beliefs are willing to change without any preemptive everything that I think is constantly changing. And as soon as I have something that seems too permanent, I destroy it and start over again. Because I'm telling you, I've had some really intense experiences where I've just been so completely out of my mind that I've just been so everything is defined by meaning, everything is defined by words, and words are just echoes of consciousness. So then what? What is this? What is language? Broke that whole thing down. What does the mysticism around it really mean? What is DNA? Is it all a simulation? I have a mix of opinions. I have it's not a cognitive dissonance, though, because I'm holding it all in my mind at once. And basically, if you're familiar with John Lamb Lash,
Oh, yeah.
some of the things he says I'm completely in agreement with, but some of the things he says is like completely dead on. I've had experiences with nature that seem transcendental. I do have to say that I feel like that is not a part of the construct. I think nature is the real deal. I think that there is a half reality, you could say. I don't want to get too deep. But like if you look at the Gnostic text, the demiurge is defined as a half maker. Now that to me is incredibly interesting because from my gnosis and from my experiences, I did DMT twice. Never got to do ayahuasca, but I did DMT twice. And one, it was like you guys say, where everything was just like, this total mind fuck, where it was just this total, like the shape shifting, elves, like the character talks about, and like the geometric shapes, like kind of morphing into each other and all that, and like the the hyperspace and all that. But then another part where it was just like nature was like alive, like they say. And what I find so interesting is in the Nag Hammadi, it doesn't say that Sophia is the goddess of the earth. It says she became the earth. And then you have, like, on the origin of the world and all that, it talks about source, the unknowable, unnameable, indescribable, it's on and on and on and on and on and on. And it's like, okay, well, this might be a little strange, but here it goes. This is like one of the most esoteric, deep concepts that I've come across into my own. What if there is like gatekeepers? Okay? Oh, just hold on with me for a second. What if there's like gatekeepers? And there's like these higher realities. Okay? And like we have a map. Okay? I'll use an analogy of a map. Okay? And like let's say like the Garden of Eden story, which we know is BS. But let's look at it from a different view. You have Lucifer, right? Or the snake, which really is the good person. But again, just for the sake of argument. And it knows everything, right? It wants you to be like God. It wants you to have all the knowledge. But what if what it's showing you is the schemata, is the matrix, is all the coordinates for that 3D reality? And so it locks you here. And what if that's what the powers that are not, the Illuminati or what have you, that's what they do. They're following the program of this, this level. But above that are higher levels. And maybe that's why they don't want to leave, because then their control breaks down. And then what if there's another level above that, and then there's entities that follow other entities? You know what I'm saying? If you really sit and meditate on this stuff, it's incredibly deep. Like it's been blowing my mind for as long as I can remember.
It is for sure. I've entertained that before, and I've gone down that line of pondering whether this is a false reality implanted over us, or the consciousness was injected into a completely artificial reality. Where I'm at right now is I feel that this is all artificial, even nature. And I know that it's a big leap, but I'm just feeling like if our consciousness was actually removed from the actual nature, like there is a real nature, if it was removed from there and injected into an artificial simulation, then the entire simulation may be fake in and of itself. But again, I mean, we're all on different paths, and we have different intuitions and different realizations and things like that. I may come back around full circle because of some new information, and go, wait a minute, maybe we are inside of a real environment with a false reality implanted over us.
Well, what I'm thinking more than anything, though, is I do believe this is false. But what I think is that there could be a higher reality that is real. And this is like the dream. This is like a projection of that. So it's a incomplete picture. So
would you say it's kind of like a copy?
Yeah. It's a false
facsimile.
copy.
Yeah, I feel that too. Like this is
Right,
a copy
yes.
of a real environment.
Right. Yeah. I would say so. But the more I read the Nag Hammadi and all that, and even some of the like more esoteric, like Hindu, like the Upanishads
Mm-hmm.
and all that. I've had some really wild experiences where I literally was like, I was tripping one day and I had like these like Egyptian hieroglyphs like flying at me in like slow motion. And like there was something trying to like talk to me. I don't know what it was, my higher self or what, but it was wild. And like,
well, let me share an experience real quick because I'm wondering if you went to the same place. I also saw a place where Egyptian hieroglyphs were coming at me, and then there was this like pyramid with an eye in the middle of it, but it was a being. And it was trying to talk to me, and it was sitting kind of like on top of kind of a Mayan type temple. Was it anything like that?
Yes. Whoa. Yes.
That's okay. Well, I came back from that experience, and Cherie said, "You're explaining what Terrence called the God mind, the Godhead." So I think we're actually going to a place that is actually, exists in one form or another, whether it exists within the simulation or not, but it's an actual point in hyperspace, an actual geographic location in hyperspace, if we're seeing the same thing, you, I, Terrence, etc.
Mm-hmm. Whoa. That's really interesting. Well, see, what I wonder is, do you believe that we can see beyond, completely beyond this matrix? Or do you think we're completely trapped within it no matter what? That's the question that I have. Is it possible to transcend this matrix completely at any time?
I think it is. I slipped out of the matrix on one occasion, and I didn't do it consciously. It was by accident, by subconscious will, perhaps. I don't know how I achieved this, but I was able to stand outside, which is when I actually saw the artificial intelligence and I saw the entire bubble that we live in. And this artificial intelligence was basically projecting literally everything, including a divine code, up into this reality. But where the AI actually exists is, in my opinion, the real world, but it's a machine, and we're living inside of the projection that the AI is projecting upon us.
Right. It talks about, if you read like, I think it's the Apocrypha of John, and it talks about how the Archons want to create man in the image of God. So that's a bit of a switch from the traditional Garden of Eden story. That's what it actually says, that it wants to create man in the image of God, and it tries to steal Sophia's spark, and it fails to do so, and she turns into a tree, which is obviously symbolic, but it's just interesting because it talks about how they try to plant their seed into her, and they fail, and they basically, see the copy, an image. And so that was always interesting to me, because to me that kind of like throws out the whole like Anunnaki type deal, where we were created by, advanced extraterrestrials that somehow are so, all knowing that they have to, they can go to like different dimensions and all this different stuff supposedly, but they didn't learn how to, human alchemy to transmute. I always thought that was interesting that no one ever thought that one out.
Well, the Anunnaki story, that was something for me personally that was pivotal in the awakening process. But I've come to the realization, as you have, that It's a bunch of BS. Hey, hold on a second, because Emily wants to jump on with us, and she wants to talk to you as well. So let me bring Emily on. Emily, how are you doing?
Hey, guys. How are you?
Hey,
great.
Nice to speak to you.
Yeah, thanks for accommodating last minute pop in here. I was listening. I'm just having a little weekend away, and I was on the way back from dinner with the parents, and I was like listening to in the car, and I'm like, oh my God, I've been wanting, like, I almost like sent you guys a message this week saying I wanted to talk about these very topics about
Oh, very nice.
the NPCs and them possibly being what we used to be like, and it's important for the whole thing. You guys, I missed your first hour, so I don't really know what you said about Westworld. But yeah, so thank you for letting me pop in. And Doc Illusion, I wanted to respond to something you were saying. I too come from the rave scene, from Los Angeles and from Texas. But yes, you're absolutely right that there are gatekeepers. I call them boundary guards. For me, this experience occurs mostly at parties. I really like to dance, and for me, it's a very inner exploration, personal, internal kind of experience. But I notice, and I also like to have psychedelic experiences, and I like the two together. But when I'm about to like hit a spot, because the dancing sort of brings that on for me, the rhythmic movement, whatever, and sometimes with psychedelic experiences, when I'm about to get to a spot where I'm about to go, where I'm about to either leave the matrix or be able to sort of see in on the next level, I notice certain archetypal figures will show up. I call them the boundary guards or the gatekeepers. And they're usually like either some kind of guy who's sort of gesture-like, who's like a good dancer and wants to distract me from what I'm doing to sort of play around with him and dance with him, or some kind of like ridiculous girl dressed like super sexy and like shaking her butt in some ridiculous way to try and distract me or whatever, right? And they'll put themselves right in front of me, like so that they're both, I can't like not, so that they're catching all of the energy coming off of me to sort of stop, like instead of my energy being directed like upwards or where I'm about to go to, it goes sort of towards them and they kind of ride it. But I have had a couple of occasions, and one in particular, where I was able to, I ended up at the next level party, because I was still in the same building, but I was not in the same and so I was at this party, and I'm dancing around, and all of a sudden, like, I'm in the same room, but the people around me are not the same. And like, it was like in the room, how it had been, there's a bunch of drunk people and people bumping into you and people not being respectful of your dance. And all of a sudden I got to this like other level that was like a little bit more like smoky and misty in the air, but I could see a boundary around each person that was like their space to dance. Like it's Dirty Dancing when he used to say, this is my dance space, this is yours, don't cross it. Around each person having like an internal dance experience. And I swear to God, I looked to the right, and this is going to sound like the most ridiculous thing, and I don't know how to explain it. I looked right next to me, and do you know who was next to me? This is going to sound so stupid. Matt Taibbi. Do you guys know who Matt Taibbi is?
No.
He's a journalist for Rolling Stone, and he has written, so he's one of these guys that kind of classify like Glenn Greenwald or Jeremy Scahill, where they do some shit that's really good, and then you're like, oh, some shit is so like left bullshit or, fucking cabal bullshit, but some of their shit's really good. And he wrote the article for Rolling Stone where he talked about the banking system was like the vampire squid sitting on top of humanity, sucking the life out of it, right? Ah,
yes. I'm familiar with that article. Okay.
So he's like literally right next to me, and he's like an amazing dancer. He's like popping and shit like that. And I'm like, what's going on here, right? And everybody there was like, it was like cool. It was like all these people who were like just doing their own dance. Like literally, it was like, I don't know, it was really interesting. It was like each person having their own artistic space and thing, and total respect for each other's boundaries and whatever.
I have been there.
Yeah. And then what would happen?
Everything you said.
Yeah. So what would happen to bring, like, what would bring me back down to like the lower level or the reality level was I would think about my friend Jason, who I was there with. And if I thought about him, it would take me back to like, zoom me right back down to regular reality. But I think I ended up back in the upper level about 3 or 4 times that night. And I noticed the thing that would bring me back was when I thought about the person who I had come to the party with. And if I sort of walked like in a certain direction in the room, like did you guys ever watch the TV show Fringe?
No, people have been assigning us homework to watch, and that's one that's on the list, but we've never got around to watching it.
Yeah, it's wild, dude.
When Walter goes into the pocket universe, or when they go into the pocket universe, they have to do like this weird combination of steps that includes like stepping diagonally, and then they go into the pocket universe. And it was almost like that when I walked in like a diagonal step across the room, or when I thought of my friend Jason, or maybe it was when I did the two things together, then it would take me back down to the regular party. And then I couldn't try and intend my way back to the upper level. It would just happen. And part of the way I dance, like I do like very, like I'm mostly like a popper and a house dancer, but I do some very geometric style popping that's called tuts. You can look it up on YouTube or whatever. And it's almost like creating geometry or like creating crop circles around your body. So I don't know if by creating like some kind of sigil around my body, it opens up a gate, and that would let me get up. But literally, like, you know how they talk about in crop circles?
The magic circle.
Yeah, in crop circles, if people talk about going inside of them and they feel like different energy fields, I always felt like that was what I was doing, like creating an energy field around myself and then kind of experiencing that. And if I did it just right, apparently that night, it was letting me go to some other level. And so when you were talking about there being gatekeepers, I was thinking about it in that very exact. So what do you think, Doc?
Yeah. Yeah. Almost everything you said. I love you guys, all of you. No, I've had some really crazy experiences. And when I say crazy, I mean surreal. And the truth is, I mean, the farther I've gone, you know, the more I've questioned things, and the more I've questioned things, the more I've come back to old ideas that I had long ago that I had to unlearn and then had to remember again. And, you know, like I think that this is a multi-tiered reality.
Yep.
So I really don't know where the top is, but I swear that there's something to this idea of there being like gatekeepers. And like you said, like everything in the world will get in your way once you get to a certain point. It's almost like, no, you're not allowed to go there, you know. And I think there's entities out there, whether they be archons or what the hell, I imagine they are, but that basically like they have control for their realm. You know, it's like an RPG game.
It seems
and like if you don't have enough experience, they're going to knock you down. And I don't know if they're lower in the sense of like they're, you know, lower astral parasites or whatever, but they have the codes for that level. And, you know, I just, like I said, I feel like there's stacks of reality, like literally not alternate realities, but like completely different realities. And they're like stacked on top of each other.
Yeah. I agree with that. Stacked realities. And I think like what I noticed for myself, like, because I've just had enough experiences to notice the similarities each time, particularly if I'm having a psychedelic experience, when I reach the point where I start to, because one of the things for me, and I've talked to other people who have some stuff like this, but no one who quite has the level of what I experienced. I have tremendous inner visions when I'm in psychedelic experience. And when I'm about to go into that phase where I can really sort of see the geometry of the many different realities, that's when these characters, people, whatever they are, tend to show up. And it's almost like something cued them that, okay, she's about to arrive, go in and try, like, swarm them. You know what I mean? Like, it's bizarre. It's like almost like on cue. And people who like we're not there, we're not in my reality at the party or at the event before then, all of a sudden are just like on me like flies on shit. You know what I mean?
Yup. They just kind of appear and they just kind of make their move, and it's like, well, where did they come from?
Yeah.
And then they make you believe it's like some kind of synchronicity or
And they weren't there before, they weren't there later. Like I usually stay at parties till well into the morning. They're never there like in the morning when you're like kind of back to normal. They're never there in the beginning and they're never there at the end. They just kind of show up during that that period. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like in the Truman Show when he's trying to get away so he can go to I think it was Atlantic City or something. They wanted to go to Atlantic City, and every time he tries to leave his neighborhood, all these cars come out of nowhere and get in front of him, and suddenly there's this traffic jam. So he backs up and he's like, oh, okay, I guess we'll go home. Not a big deal. Like it was silly for me to think that way. And he comes right back and they're all gone. And he's like, oh, wow, what do you know? You know, suddenly when I say I'm not going to go, they're all gone now. You know, that's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen the Truman Show, but that sort of sounds like it. And there used to be this one kid, I haven't seen him in a while, but literally he would always show up at a party, like literally at the same point, like maybe like 5:30 in the morning. And he would show up and sort of like mock me. Like he would never be there, but it would literally, he'd show up at the same point every time. And it was like, he'd stand next to me and he'd like almost imitate my dancing. Like he was trying to mock me, but I'm not really. And he wouldn't look at me in the eyes. And it was so strange. I haven't seen him in like a while, but like for literally like 3 or 4 years, that would happen every single time. You know what I mean? And it's like, who is this person? Like, is this like some sort of NPC or some sort of, guard or gatekeeper that is cued to sort of come in at a certain point? You know what I mean? Like the other ones were all maybe like a little different each time, but this was the same guy every time. And bizarre. That's
strange, but you know, I get the sense that people do come into our lives like that to push us on certain paths, and it's just like a video game. You encounter a certain point in a video game, and then you encounter an NPC, and they try to direct your path one way or another. It could be benevolent and malevolent at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. I think part of it was just whether I was
benevolent
to be distracted, or whether I was going to play with him, or whether you know what I mean. What the whole. He doesn't show up anymore. And I'm not in anywhere near the same mindset I was during those years, and he doesn't show up anymore. So, but what you were saying brings me to the NPC that I recently had an experience with. So I was last time I spoke. Go ahead.
They love me. It took me a while to figure out that's what they were, but they love me. NPCs love to surround me. They swarm me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I never, so I've been kind of having with myself and with my friends the same sort of discussion. Part of the reason I love you guys is because we seem to, like, even though we have different paths, they're sort of always arriving at the same place at about the same time. And,
exactly.
So I've been, thinking about this a lot. And so the last time I spoke to you guys, like after a show a few weeks ago, I was about to go out to a party. And I did, and it was an amazing party, and I'll give you a full report after this, but I want to tell you about the NPC first. And it was, at one point, this guy came up to me, and he was so strange. And when I say strange, it was like he didn't understand how to talk to me. Like, he didn't understand how to talk to a human. He was very pretty. Like, he was, like, very pretty, like, blonde hair and blue eyes, and, like, very pretty. And very quickly, I realized, oh, my God, this guy's not human. This guy is a non-player character. But he was very sweet, and he was trying to figure me out. Like, he's not trying to figure me out in a way like he was trying to figure me out to trick me or something. He was intrigued, and he wanted to understand how this works. He was a non-player character who was trying to become one of us. And I think there's a lot of them out there. And I think we're dealing with a lot of different things. I think we're dealing with the situation with some people who are organic, and you can't see me, but I'm making quotation marks, organic humans who are falling backwards into a stage of being a non-player character or being an android or a cyborg or something. And then there are these other beings that are that or were that, and they're trying to become fully realized human beings. And I think we have to not be kind of what you guys were talking about earlier. Maybe that's who we were. Maybe that's what we were. And maybe this thing that we're going through is, like maybe the thing is always, we've always felt like weirdos and separate and a little different than our friends and whatever. It's because we had this sort of awareness that the other people didn't have. And there's some characters that are coming on behind us that are wanting to make that breakthrough to becoming completely human, or to be, I don't know what the right term to use is, but even though he didn't know how to talk to me, it was like somebody from another planet or something, it was like alien, but he was speaking English. And he almost wanted to touch me. Like, he didn't know what to do. And he was very sweet. And I'm like, okay, this presents like a different level of the issue, because we have to have some level of sympathy and maybe even some level of guidance and care for some of these non-player characters who are trying to become players. and trying earnestly. What do you guys think about that?
That's pretty interesting because that's what we were actually talking about in the first hour about Westworld and how the NPCs in that particular film seem to be the ones that were waking up to their consciousness and sentience. And, I wonder what exactly is going on here. I know that they're trying to merge organic consciousness with machines on the physical as well as the spiritual level, but on the physical, so as above, so below, we can apply these principles to the spiritual realm. But I wonder if some of these may not necessarily be NPCs, but rather organic consciousness in and of itself that is waking up from an NPC-like state. Because if you look back at our rave days, for example, I mean, the early rave days, at least I'm speaking personally, when I was like 17 years old, I had no idea of any of this. I mean, I was pretty much playing out the NPC program there. And then when we got into rap music as well, I mean, that's a whole nother mind control program in and of itself. Antisocial, et cetera, and it's all based to keep you inside of this matrix and create prisoners inside of a prison itself. So, what do you think about that, Emily? Do you think it could have been somebody with a real consciousness that's waking up, or do you think the NPCs are becoming sentient?
I think there's probably both. There's probably some of each. I mean, for my own self,
Yeah.
the whole time, like with me, the whole rave thing, I wasn't doing not NP. Like literally within the first 6 months that I ever started going to parties, it became a highly internal self-exploration and connection to something that seemed to be outside of myself, but still myself kind of.
Same.
But I was very aware that generally I was probably the only one in the room having that experience. I could see the difference between myself and the other people. Sometimes I would see that there would be another one like me, and we would rarely talk, but our eyes would lock for a second with that feeling of like, you see what I see. Do we know what's going on here? I think that like somehow, like it's bizarre. This music and these frequencies, for some people, it puts them into a trance. It puts them into a coma. It sends them to sleep. Like I literally know people, and some of them are very talented musicians and people who do, the visuals and audio engineering and stuff like that, who literally, because of this music, are tending into trans-humanism. Okay, they are merging themselves with the machine. And then I know a few other people like yourself who these frequencies have reminded me of who I was and have brought me into a higher level of, do we call it like true conscience or true sentience or raw consciousness or organic humanity or whatever it is. So I don't know. There's something very interesting about these frequencies, and they're absolutely weaponized, and it's like really just like one hair over from whether it's damaging to you or whether it's helping you. And I think part of whether it damages you or helps you is if whether or not you're aware of what it is.
Well, interestingly enough, in the TV show Westworld, the malevolent creator god, Dr. Ford, puts a backdoor code into each and every host that whenever he plays a certain piece of music, it puts them to sleep and they have to obey him no matter what.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's
That reminds me of Dark City. You guys ever see Dark City?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't.
That's really good too.
The premise of Dark City, it's very similar to the Matrix. Well, kind of, but basically every single night everything changes and the consciousness is transferred from one role to another. So you could be a doctor one day and then you wake up the next day and you're actually in the role of the patient, for example. So it gets deeper than that. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it, but it's pretty interesting.
Real quickly on Westworld, because I didn't get to hear you guys' first hour because I was in dinner, but Westworld is interesting. I've never been able to get past, I think I'm into the third episode, and literally I've never been able to get past that because when I watch that, it brings up so many memories for me. It does something to my, it's a real, I really am going to push myself to watch it, but there's so many, it brings up so much stuff for me just from your project program kind of things. That literally I can watch almost any show, but that one, like I can almost not look at it straight on. I have to like look out of the corner of my eye. But aside from that, when I first saw that show, I knew immediately what Burning Man was. Burning Man is Westworld. Okay, so if you look at Burning Man is out there in the middle of the desert on government land, right? All those people come there. You know damn well there's a base under that shit, okay? And you know damn well stock and the CIA and all that shit, all people from Silicon Valley are there experimenting with stuff. But there's also all sorts of entities, other kinds of consciousness that are there, knowing that people are going to be there in a highly altered state, not only highly altered, but with, in unhospitable conditions, hot, dehydrated, without a lot of food. You're open to so much shit. Like, there's so many things going on there, but think about it. It's the perfect place to send up NPCs, clones, cyborgs, and see, let's see if the people notice. Because people are going to be on drugs, and they'll think the other people are on drugs. So if someone seems weird to them, they'll just be like, oh, they're on drugs.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's like the asylums. Everyone's so crazy. But, most of those people have been through. And what you're talking about with the music, man, that is a really profound thing that I've always wondered about, too. From what I understand, some of the older breaks and house tracks are based on some really ancient shamanic drum beats and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So have you?
So they basically took these really ancient, and I think that's why some people tap into it. They're like, whoa. And other people are like, like you said, the trans-humanism. It's a duality. It's a matter of perception. And it all is. And so they can swarm all they want. We're still going to be raw. But,
If you listen to certain kinds of like old school house, but particularly go listen to acid house from London from the late 80s and early 90s. Okay, and I'm telling you, go look into go read Mark Devlin. Mark Devlin's new book is about to come out, Musical Truth too, and there's a whole bunch in there about the acid house scene in London. And I'm telling you, man, that shit was brought to us by Tavistock Institute. And the whole...
No, listen. Before I forget, there's one thing I got to say, because I don't want to forget this. From what I understand, some of the earliest raves were actually done outside of castles.
Yeah.
No joke.
Yeah, well, I
So, go on.
I think the earliest raves occurred both outside and inside the pyramids. And that this whole, if you really look at the kind of signs and symbols and things like that are being thrown up with a lot of dance music, particularly at some of these larger festivals, they're trying to recreate that. They're trying to bring those energies back and use them to manipulate in a certain way. They can be very freeing energies. No, they can be very controlling energies. And back to what I was saying about Burning Man. So think all that experimentation can go on. The theme this year at Burning Man was masks, right? It's fucking 200 degrees out there. Why would anybody want to wear a mask? If somebody has a mask on, you can't really see their eyes. So you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between who's actually sentient and who's actually human and who isn't. You know what the theme is going to be this year? iRobot.
No.
Oh, God.
They're telling you. So a week after Burning Man happened this year, Randy and I did a podcast about it. We were talking about it because, there was a kid who actually ran into the fire, ran into the Burning Man, and became the Burning Man this year. And we were talking about all this stuff, and I was talking about how I knew that when I first saw Westworld, I'm like, Burning Man is Westworld. Somebody went and got. I was talking about how it's interesting to look at the pictures of Burning Man from above. Somebody went and got there's a couple different insignias for Westworld. The symbol for Westworld looks exactly like what Burning Man looks like from the aerial photos. It's like a symbol. It's like a certain kind of sigil. It's a certain kind of sigil. I'm telling you, literally, that's what it is. I'm not being metaphorical or cute or anything like that. Burning Man is Westworld.
They use sigils for everything.
Yep.
Because what they do is they steal all the ancient knowledge, kill the people with it, call them demons, and then, utilize it for their own machinations.
Yep.
Wow. That is, I'm looking at the symbol now. I've got it up on the screen, and it looks exactly like the Westworld symbol.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I never thought about that, but I've always been apprehensive about going to Burning Man. I mean, it's something about sand all over me while I'm tripping my balls off doesn't really sound appealing.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go because
Right.
a lot of things there I love, but I also instinctively, intuitively understand, particularly with my background, that I can't go there. It's not safe for me. You know what I mean? Like, especially with the shit that I'm doing now and the shit that I'm talking about. You know, like I know there's a lot of music and art that I really like there, but I know what it is. It's kind of like, you know, yeah, I just, you know what I mean? Like I don't know if I want to participate in that experiment. Like some of these other experiments I participated in, I was already involved in before I realized it. This one I know beforehand, so I just don't know if I want to experiment. You know what I mean? I don't know if I want to participate.
Well, one thing that I've noticed about Westworld that I'm going to mention now, because if I don't, I'll forget. But they actually, the gods at on the board of directors literally call for a blood sacrifice. They have to have a blood sacrifice of what they think is an organic consciousness in order to keep the part going.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me jump in for a minute because we're going to hit the break in about 10 minutes. Actually, the end of the show.
Oh, yeah.
So,
show.
Doc, let me let you go because I want to change the subject while I have Emily because I've got something really amazing that I think she'll be really, really interested in. I want to say thank you very much for calling in. And is there anything else on your mind that you wanted to vocalize?
Except that I have a Google Hangout that I started that I'm looking to talk to three minds. Just, you know, something I started. I can put the link in the chat if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And what is the link? Is there a link you can give out on air?
No, yeah, I just got to send it because I got to copy it and paste it and all that fun stuff.
Gotcha.
And I have a channel that I started as well.
Awesome.
If anyone, then that's it. Thank you guys.
Well, hold on. What's the name of the channel? You got to tell us the name so we can go there.
Oh, no. It's just my avatar.
Oh, okay, cool.
I didn't even think about it. So, yeah, I just click my avatar and you're in.
Doc, hit me up on Facebook sometimes so we can chat further.
I don't use it, but you can join the hangout.
Okay.
Awesome. Love you, bro. Thank you very much for calling in. All right, take care.
Yeah, brother.
All right. So, Emily, now that I got you, okay. Do you ever get into VR? Have you ever played HTC Vive or anything like this?
So I've never done any of that. I went to an art show one time that had something like that, like had some kind of goggles that created a virtual reality around them, and I used it, and I was like, compared to the shit I see behind my eyes when I'm like dancing and trippy and shit, this shit is stupid.
Okay. So there's this game called The Price of Freedom. Do you remember this, Cherie?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the price of freedom, you start out, you're a CIA agent. And you're told that you need to go assassinate this person because he's going to give a bunch of secrets. He's selling secrets on chemical warfare to the Russians. So you're navigating through here. You find the guy, you shoot him in the back of the head. Now you're supposed to find the evidence that he has, and you're supposed to destroy the evidence.
Destroy it, right.
So you look for clues throughout the room, and he's typing something up there, and he says, you know, the evidence is hidden here, but it's covered in blood, and you go through and you find all these clues. And then you find the secret room, and you open up his secret room. Once you get there, you start seeing all of these files that he has. And so apparently his daughter was taken to a psychiatric hospital, and they started a project that I'm sure you're familiar with called MK Ultra. They named MK Naomi in there. They name all these other different projects. Do you remember off the top of your head, Cherie, what projects they named?
I think it was
Project Talent,
Search,
Project Search, Project Naomi.
I think Mockingbird was in there.
There's this whole list of stuff, and you pull out this file and you're looking at this list, and so you start to unravel more clues. There's like an audio recording that you listen to, and he's talking about, I know that my daughter is alive. They told me she committed suicide at the hospital, but I know she's alive. And then there's another tape where they're talking about, we're going to tell the father that she's dead and that she committed suicide, but we're actually training her to be this, to be that, et cetera, et cetera. So you get another message from the guy, and he's like, burn the evidence. And you realize at the end of the game that there's this one final document that you find, and it says the ultimate test is to see if we can get her to kill her own father. And then you realize you are the girl that was kidnapped, taken to this facility, and turned into this MK Ultra killer. and that you just killed your own father.
You find vials of LSD.
Oh yeah,
too,
yeah. They
and,
talk about
second
LSD and all kinds of different things. Yeah, there's vials of LSD and all these, mind control, quote unquote, mind control drugs in there. But when I played it, my jaw was just on the freaking floor. And the game ends, and you go back to the hospital, and you're sitting in there in the room, and the person's telling you through the speaker, "Oh, you've done such a great job. We have something here for you." And there's a dress up on the wall, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to get your take on this, and I think it's something you should look up: The Price of Freedom VR game.
Wow, that's wow, like that. That's a little. The sound of that whole thing sounds a little too close to home for me. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, it's crazy. I've heard a lot of these video games now, like they all have culture kinds of things in them. But what you just described, has elements from Stranger Things, elements from the OA, elements from Sense8, and these shows are all based on files that belong to us, that we never get to see, but these people are looking at them in order to create these shows. And obviously in order to create these virtual reality experiences and whatnot. Wow. Yeah. No, I've never played a virtual reality game. I just had those one experience with the goggles. But literally, that pretty much sounds like they're giving you the Ultra experience right there, because part of the mind control is the idea that there's mind control and discovering that there's mind control. And you know what I mean? The whole, like what you just walked people through right there in that quick little description, like was a very basic and not emotional summary of what someone waking up to this somewhat goes through.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I've got it up on the screen now. He's holding a bottle of,
Truth Serum.
Truth Serum. Now he's holding up a bottle of LSD. And he's got the documents in his hand, and he's reading through the documents, et cetera, et cetera. So I just thought, I thought it was an interesting experience, because it's everything you've talked about. It's, down to even the names of the projects. So
I'm looking at that, what you're showing on screen right now. And literally it looks like a document I found in some papers of my mother's.
I know.
Yeah. Even the print on there. This isn't something I've talked about too seriously publicly yet, but at some point I will. Like some of what you and I have been talking about tonight with Doc and with Cherie here, I found documentation that makes me think that my mother worked on the projects that led to this, even though it makes no sense because my mother is a financial analyst. You know what I mean? Supposedly, or she was. She's retired and old now, whatever. But this shit is really circular. It brings you right back to that spot. And what you were saying when you went through the list there, yeah, you're probably looking at MK Search and MK Often. And those two are MK Ultra is the umbrella thing, but the shit that we're talking about in terms of there's lots of different programs, some having to do with assassins and all this kind of stuff. But the kind of thing that someone like myself, or perhaps someone like you, or someone, right?
Okay, here's something from this document here. Subproject has uncovered a promising mind control method called depatterning. Electroshock is given in high doses, destroying memories. Subject is then placed in a drug-induced sleep and played a loop of reprogramming audio. Upon awakening, subject is given, it's hard for me to read the bottom two letters, but subject is given, I assume, LSD or something like that. But it's everything. It's all right here. Right there. I don't understand how they're so blatant about this. Here it is: Project Paperclip, Project Chatter, Project Artichoke, Project Midget, Project Naomi, Project...
That would be me, Project Midget.
And then you've got this black light, and this guy's written all this stuff over all these documents and on the wall, and you use the black light to decode everything, and yeah. But the ending, the realization that you're the agent that's been programmed is... I
think this is, I think, so the hints are everywhere. I think that the point, we're all waking up to the fact that we're in a virtual reality game. And maybe this is a topic for another show sometime, but I think I've kind of figured out a little what the psychedelics are. And, this would be a long conversation. And actually, you guys are exactly the ones I want to have it with. I haven't really had the conversation with just one friend of mine, but yeah, I think, part of the waking up is it's this circular loop thing, discovering the thing is like, and trying to figure out if like you're the player or you're the game or what your role is in this is part of it. And are we actually in a game that we created? Like sometimes I think that like we're just experiencing a hallucination from the original party at the pyramids, right? Like this whole thing, like
we're just tripping really super hard or something.
That was like the whole party, like it seemed like it could have been like a year and you just ended up back at the same place that you started at, like weird trips like that. Like, I don't know what this is. We're in something. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Like I have a lot of ideas and we can toss them around sometime, but just real quickly to hit on that list you were talking about. Like I go through and I hear all the different names of different projects. And sometimes when I see the names of certain projects, it brings another word to my mind because we all know that there's some projects that people don't really know about yet. And one that always pops up for me, that always comes in my head when I hear people talk about search and often, is something that I think is called MK Option. If there's anybody out there who's ever heard of something called MK Option or knows anything about it, I'd love to hear about it, but it's something I have an intuitive feeling about. And then the other thing is I was recently listening to a show of Greg Carlwood's, Higher Side Chats, and he had on Janice Barcelo, who talks a lot about like the trauma of the birth process and all this kind of stuff. But he mentioned she has a new book coming out called MK Ultrasound. And when I heard that word, MK Ultrasound, my head started vibrating in a way that was like, my body tensed up. And to me, I know it's a hit on something. I'm wondering if for some of us who were programmed to or through this rave scene, that is the term, that might be the terminology, even though she's talking about something else. She's talking about something that happens pre-birth. What if that's where this pattern was set for us, that we would be into this music based on the frequencies? When I heard that term MK Ultrasound, I was like, oh God, I'm going to have to talk to her, but I'm going to have to figure out a way to sort of connect what she's talking about to what I'm thinking. You know what I mean? And she's very into the whole like pre-birth trauma thing, which is a very real thing. And I totally respect her work, but I don't even know if she'd be able to connect it with what you and I are talking about, even though there's a very real connection. You know what I mean?
Hey, I got a question for you. Do you have a little bit of time so we can go do some overtime?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Do you have a camera?
I have a camera. I just don't know if I couldn't get on the better speed internet at the hotel.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We can try it. And if it works, I'm cool with that.
Okay, let's give it a try. So, yeah, we'll see if we can get that working. I'm going to call you right back, though. I'm going to wrap up the show and give you a call right back here in a few. Let's see. All right. So we disconnected the call lines, ladies and gentlemen. If anybody wants to call in, please hold the calls for now. But everybody listening on TFRlive.com, stay tuned. Brent Thomas is coming up next with Paranormal Portal. And we'll keep it going for everybody on YouTube and Facebook right here on Beyond the Veil with Emily Moyer. So we love you. Kiss the one you love right now. You never know the last time it's going to be. We'll be right back.
Love you guys. We'll see you next week.
At Amazon.com.
My dear traveler, you are a divine being, an all-powerful creator. And within you dwells infinite wisdom. All that is left is to step beyond the veil.
I don't know how you guys and gals manage to get us to do overtime every single time. There must be like some psychic, energetic force coming from the listeners out there. Like, we will do overtime. I bet you it's led by Morpheus. He's always the one calling for our overtime. But we have Emily Moyer of Off Planet Radio on with us, and we've got our video feed working, so I think it's going to look great. But I want to get more into the rave scene, the rave culture, the rave programming, because, when she first brought all this information to the table, I had to digest it, and my first instinct was like, it sounds kind of crazy. But, the deeper I get into it, the more I realize this is what was going on here. So, the big question is, how is that affecting us? And then I had to question my whole path after that. That's how I broke out of the truther programming, is she brought the idea of truther programming to the table. And I thought, okay, well, let me really understand this truther concept here. oh wow, shit, I've been working for the enemy the whole time, thinking that I'm fighting the New World Order, and I've really been pushing this agenda forward. What am I doing? So how did all this programming affect us now that we've all been subjected to? So maybe we can touch upon these questions. All right, so we've got Emily back. So what do you think? I mean, how the heck did this happen? Hold on. I think you're muted.
Okay.
All right. There you are.
Somebody has to excuse me. No makeup tonight. I'm on vacation and just relaxing, but okay.
You look beautiful.
Thank you. Anyway, so with the rave scene, like this is one of the things I'm so passionate about talking about this. And I sometimes I feel like I need to be careful, but I don't want to be careful. But I have to make sure I'm very clear in the way I talk about this, because I don't want in any way people to think that I'm trashing it, the party scene, or throwing people under the bus, because I'm still very involved in the underground dance music scene, and I love it. I'm totally passionate about it. But like with everything else, if we don't understand what we're part of, then it's being used to control us. And if we can wrestle this back from Tavistock Institute and stuff like that, then this can actually, I described that experience I had where I've reached other levels, right? If we can, if we can wrestle back the control of this and be aware of all of the forces and all the things going on around us with this situation, then it can be something incredible. And so when I talk about this, I don't want people to think I'm trying to call people out or bust, that's not it. Anybody who's ever watched me dance knows how much I love this. I just think that when we are completely aware of who we are, what is going on, and what we're involved in, that's when we have the most power and most ability to make the best use of it for the forward progress of ourselves and the people around us. And so that is my intent with talking about this. It's not just to talk shit and say that everything's a mind control program and whatever, because they don't waste time creating a mind control program around something if that thing doesn't have the potential to be very powerful, right? If it's just some stupid, silly nonsense, they'll just let it happen because they want people to be, you know what I mean? So that's why I talk about this. So with the rave scene and with the music, I think it's basically, it's rhythmic music. Since your Doc Illusion was talking about it, that some of those tribal beats and rhythms that whether people who don't appreciate dance music can understand this or not, the same rhythms are present in house music, in techno music, in drum and bass music. And when people can use them to, entrance themselves, not in a mind controlled brain entrainment way, but in a way to sort of, align their movement and their energy with, a certain vibration or frequency to, I think this is the way it is. I think we live in this field, this morphogenic field that has pockets of information and knowledge hidden at certain levels and frequencies. And when you have your body in a certain condition and then take your body to a certain frequency, the information that's available at that level opens up to you. Okay. And you can travel through, I think, Seven Bomar is really good on some of this stuff. Sonia Barrett is really good on some of this stuff. We're going to have her on the show next week.
Well, let me jump in for a moment, Emily. When you were, when I was playing that game and it said playing repetitive music to program the consciousness, I immediately thought of the rave scene. I mean, that's exactly what it is. Repetitive music over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. So I think that when I was talking about Ginny Sparslow and this idea of unkill ultrasound, I think I think what she's talking about is that children have been damaged and mind control has started in the womb with some of these ultrasound machines, which must create a frequency that is like a monotonous tone. And I think that maybe some of us who had some of these experiences, whether, in pre-birth trauma or in childhood, then are attracted to that music. In some ways, it's almost like a Stockholm syndrome, right? Like we're attracted to the thing that was used to entrap us or to cage us or whatever, right?
Interesting.
Right? But I think there's something about it that doesn't, I think that you can't, there's no, a frequency is just a frequency, and it can be just like anything else. Technology can be used to free or to enslave. You know what I mean? And same thing with frequencies. I think natural frequencies are one of the earliest forms of technology. Okay. And I think that some of the things that they're trying to do it works for a period of time, but for some people with certain kinds of spirits or energies, it doesn't necessarily work, right? And I think it only works at certain, we all know that about the conspiracy with the music at 440 instead of 432. And, I think that part of the reason that they killed the rave scene that you and I were sort of involved in, if, they really shut that down. And when they brought it back, they brought back some music that was like really discordant and really like disturbing. Like it was not, like harmonic or synchronistic in the same way that some of the music before that had been. And that is a lot of that music is music that I don't particularly care for. I know some people really like it, like some of the step kind of stuff and whatever.
Well, it goes even deeper than that. I mean, down in Texas, they not only killed the scene, but they got rid of all the MDMA, they got rid of all the LSD, they replaced it with meth, they replaced it with heroin, and then we went to a party in like 2001, and it was a bunch of people drinking alcohol, and I was like, alcohol has never been introduced into any of this. Like, it was totally different vibe, different everything. And at that point, I just kind of gave up on it completely. But, I thought because George Bush was the governor at the time, they knew 9/11 was coming up. I figured that they were breaking up all of these rave parties because you can't have all these people uniting. I mean, people were uniting in upwards of 10, 15, 20,000 at a time, and you were going to do some tyrannical shit like 9/11. Well, there you go. But maybe it's even deeper than that.
Well, it is. And this is, so I noticed the same thing as you. Like, actually, there was never again in Austin another what I would term proper rave after 9/11. Like literally, like the next week, there was supposed to be one that I was working on. It got canceled, and there was never everything else after that was like dumb shit, right? Like, I mean, back here now in Los Angeles, we have great undergrounds and stuff like that, but the rave scene was never the same after that, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that was really that happened, and then within a year, they were doing all the Rave Act and the crack house laws, trying to do the thing where they were saying that anybody who was putting on a rave was the same as a person who's running a crack house.
Right.
And that if people are doing drugs, then you're responsible for that. And so the charges and the sentencing would be like the same as it was for people running crack houses. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that people missed, and maybe you and I discussed this briefly when you guys were on our show the first time, or maybe just in our private conversation, attached to that bill, that bill, the Rave Act, they tried to pass it on its own. It didn't pass. So what they did, and there's never a mistake, and Cherie, you will know this, what they did to pass it was they attached it to the Amber Alert bill. So if anybody who passed the Amber Alert bill was passing the Rave Act, and of course everybody's going to pass the Amber Alert bill, right? But they're going to vote yes on that because that's about missing
children. Yeah.
Right? One of the things that has gone overlooked about the rave scene is it's a kind of scene that a lot of people who were maybe children on the back of milk cartons or children involved in projects, which is another way of abducting a child, even though theoretically they're often still with the family, they're sort of gone, right? A lot of them find their way to the rave scene. Also, there's been a lot of kids gone missing from parties, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a mistake that they attach those two. There's like some kind of underneath hidden code. And of course, we now know about Amber Alert and Laura Silsby and her connection to stealing children from Haiti and all that kind of stuff, right? It wouldn't, I've long thought, and again, like if anybody hears this who knows me from parties and wants to understand why I'm talking about this and what I exactly mean, please ask questions before you assume anything. But just like there's a large business of child trafficking around professional sports, I'm going to go out and say that there's the same thing around concerts, but also some of these kinds of musical events. We do see a lot of those kinds of kids at parties, girls who like looked like maybe they were 18 or 19, but really they were 14 or 15 or 16, right? And
when I used to go to parties, we were 15 years old, and it was common to see 13, 14, 15-year-old kids there.
Right, and they would be the girlfriend of a DJ who was like 21 or 22, and they'd be doing drugs, and maybe they were like having, being involved with multiple older people. There is a connection here, and I'm not 100% clear on what it is, but like when I didn't have any of this kind of knowledge that I have now back then, because this was back in 2001. But when I saw that bill was attached, and do you know who sponsored that bill? You know who sponsored that bill, the Rave Act attached to them? Creepy Joe Biden.
Mr. Handsy on 12-year-old girls, Joe Biden.
shit is never a mistake. And I don't know, Sherry, because you're like a researcher and you're even more extreme than me in this, like multiple files in your brain, cross-referencing everything all the time.
Because of the programming they raised me with.
Because you have this disparate piece of knowledge in your head from when you were a kid and you somehow connect to this thing you just found out now and seem to have no possible thing to do with each other, but you can find the connection. My brain does that shit too, probably to a lesser degree than yours. It's not a mistake how these things happen. And they killed the rave scene, and when it came back, it was like much more corporatized, and it was with crappy music, and it was ick. I just didn't like it anymore. I really kind of stayed away from most of the scene for a couple of years until I moved back to Los Angeles, where there was starting to be like this underground warehouse scene popped up, which was kind of like the people who had gone to raves but had sort of grown up. You know what I mean? Like there'd always been an underground warehouse scene, but I've never to this day been to any kind of event in Texas that was anything near as good as what we were going to in 99, 2000 and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
They killed that. And, I had some of my I started to go to parties here in Los Angeles, but I didn't have that come online moment, that wake up moment, that starting to observe myself and then observe myself, observing myself moment until Texas. There was something magical about the party scene in Texas, particularly in Austin, where I just can't explain it. Like it really, I don't know if I would be here sitting talking to you about this topic if I hadn't had that experience for that period of time.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So there's real power in this. And, Tavistock doesn't waste its time playing with silly stuff, right? Either they created this scene to see what they could do with it, or they saw it was happening and they wanted to try and manipulate it. Mark Devlin is really good on this. His new book is going to come out in the next couple of months. He and I are working on a little event together and whatever, but he went back and looked into the roots of the acid house scene in London in the late 80s and early 90s and how it connected to the Summer of Love and the kind of musical stuff that like Dave McGowan talked about with the hippie music scene and how the acid house music scene sort of led to this version of the electronic dance music scene we have in the United States now. Not, both on the, he's speaking more about these like massive festivals that are just like totally like mind control programming shit with sigils and ridiculous music and whatever. But also, he and I have spoken a lot about what's going on in these more underground things. And I think the underground is being really observed and it's used to observe and experiment. And then when they've decided what they want to do, then they deploy it in mass at some of these larger festivals. And you can see that. I mean, it's very obvious. Go look at some of the videos from Tomorrowland Festival. There's this situation going on where it's something has changed now, but for a period of time, this company called SFX or SFX or SDX or something like that owned, like they had gone up and bought up all the main big raves in the United States. And they also owned Beatport. And Beatport is the technology, like the music doesn't come on record. Most DJs don't play on records and shit anymore. They're mostly playing on digital files, either that they've been transferred to CD or that they're playing from their computer. And the way you buy these digital files is from online, MP3 kind of digital dance download stores. And the main one is Beatport. And you and I both know from looking at things like, we all know about the technologies related to Hulu and how they sort of piggyback frequencies and stuff like that onto the things you watch on your computer. The same thing is happening with the music. Everything, producer creates a track and then it has to go through Beatport software to be able to go out to the masses. What kind of information and frequencies and other things are they embedding in that, right?
Well, I can point to one example where they did embed something in a piece of music. It's not a mind control situation, but I was watching a documentary about these POWs that were captured by, I want to say, I don't remember what country they were captured by. But what they did is they embedded Morse code in the music, in a piece of popular music, to let them know that they were coming to get them.
Yeah.
So we've seen the military do this.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, like, they could attack, I mean, literally, like, so I got to a space for myself where I was, I have all these, like, I'm a total visionary when I'm in a psychedelic experience. Like, I just go complete other worlds behind my eyelids. And I was completely, like, engaged and interacting with them. And at a certain point, like, I had the thought, is there somebody running like an AI program on me, right? Or is this a programmed experience? And then I thought about like, okay, the music. I understand that the music like cymatics creates geometry, but this was like some of the stuff that I was getting into was like so like intricate and had so much like meaning and stuff embedded behind it, and I started to wonder if this was something like really synthetic. Now that's the genius of this, is that like the truly like sort of enlightened or like breakthrough kind of psychedelic experience can be sort of mimicked synthetically by some of these frequencies with both sound and with light. And so I had to take a period of time where I stepped back from everything to sort of like check what was going on with my own mind, because I do think that like they can piggyback things on to these sounds and frequencies and, embed little things, embed little ideas, embed a little bit of information, embed code. Like if we're in a simulation, then what's making us operate is code. And and if we're getting more and more clever, they have to find more and more clever ways to program us, right? Like it used to be pretty simple. Like, I don't know if you followed any of the other work that I've been doing, but I've been really looking into the idea, starting with sugar as programmable matter, but of almost everything we eat and certain elements of things that we think are nature as being what's programming us, right?
Well, I saw this in the ayahuasca realm several years ago, and I've said this before, that I started looking at everything that goes into my body as code. Some's good code, some's bad code, et cetera, et cetera. I just, I was thinking of it metaphorically, but I think it's possible that some of this code can actually be programmed as actual code.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And so the same thing with music, the same thing with light and all of this kind of thing. So back to my point, the same company, SFX or SDX, I think it was F or G, is owning almost all the major festivals. They own Beatport. Beatport has stages at the festivals, right? So like everything that on that stage is being controlled by Beatport technology. And then this company also owned all of like the souvenirs and products and T-shirts and stuff like that being sold to them. So they were controlling the experience from start to finish. They were controlling the music. The DJs produce, or the musicians produce the tracks, but it has to be run through Beatport. So they're controlling the music, they're controlling the live experience, the event, the party, and then they're controlling the memories, the souvenirs, and the sigils that people walk away from the show with. Like they're controlling the experience from start to finish. And it's a corporation. And the guy running the corporation, like I can't remember what his name is right now, but like when I looked into him, I think I talked about it on a show with Mark Devlin, but there's even been a few other videos on YouTube. This guy was like gross. Like there was like, it was just like the last person like you would ever want. Like I don't understand. Like some of these people who sold their parties, their events to him, either they must. I have no respect for them. It was just they were offered a lot of money, but like were they blackmailed into it? I don't know. Nobody would want to hand over something that they worked to build for years and years to a douchebag like this. Right. And I read an interview with him where he was laughing about how he knows nothing about the music at all. It doesn't care about it at all, but he thinks it's just great. Right. Like he was like, I don't know anything about it, but I love it. You know what I mean? Like it was so like it's like giving something you really care about to someone who has no care for it at all.
Right.
Leaving it in control. And I don't really think he was the one controlling everything, but that's the perfect kind of person you want in there, because then all of these other hidden hands, your Tavistocks, your intelligence agencies, your people, people with knowledge about how to use sound and light as weaponry
can have their way with it.
Right. He would hoard out to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You got it.
There is an instance that I can talk about. Back in the year 1284, there was a man that was able to use sound frequencies and different tones to lead a group of 130 children to their deaths. And his name was the Pied Piper of Hamelin. It actually did exist. It actually really happened. In 1284, while the town of Hamelin was suffering from a rat infestation, a piper dressed in multicolored clothing appeared, claiming to be a rat catcher. He promised the mayor a solution to their problem with the rats. The mayor, in turn, promised to pay him for the removal of the rats. The sum was 1,000 guilders, which was a lot of money back then. The piper accepted and played his pipe to lure the rats into the Weser River, where all but one drowned. Despite the piper's success, the mayor reneged on his promise and refused to pay him the full sum. So they ended up even blaming him for the rats in the first place. So enraged, the piper stormed out of town, vowing to return later to take revenge. On St. John and Paul's Day, while the adults were in church, The piper returned dressed in green like a hunter playing his pipe. In so doing, he attracted the town's children. 130 children followed him out of town and into a cave and were never seen again. Depending on the version, at most 3 children remained behind. One was lame and couldn't follow quickly enough. The second was deaf and therefore could not hear the music, and the last was blind and unable to see where he was going. The 3 informed the villagers of what had happened when they came out of church. So in other versions, they didn't die. They were actually taken to a mountain, or they were, but the point being, everyone that I've talked to that lived during that time and was able to go to these raves seems to be of a certain mindset. And that mindset has, it's evolved over time, but they all seem to have the same experiences and the same feelings. And, a lot of them haven't done well in their lives, or they've had very specific things happen to them in their lives, or that don't even happen to them, but they make the same choices, it seems. And I am wondering,
almost as if playing out a program.
Yeah, almost as if they're playing out a certain program that they were embedded with during that time. And the only ones that escaped it are the ones that focused on the consciousness aspect of their experiences, even in a roundabout way back then. I notice a lot of Chris's music, it focuses on it really does focus on consciousness in a roundabout way. It focuses on being the alpha and the omega yourself, instead of giving that title over to a greater deity. It's about the power of the individual and the power of the group of kids, not the power of groups, but the power of consciousness in a roundabout way. They were the only ones that seemed to escape that. And then the other ones that did escape were people like me, who were too involved in the church, or they were too involved in.
Well, that's a whole other form of mind control.
And that's a whole other form of mind control. But that just means it's a different form of mind control that I wasn't exposed to. So, and it's interesting that it happens like that. It happened like that. And there's metaphor too. Then, because there's in the year 1212, and this was, 12 years before this happened, a bunch of kids went on the children's crusade. And there literally was in the Middle Ages, there was a crusade to come up against the Muslim armies with children. They really believed they recruited all the thousands and thousands of kids to go on this crusade, saying that children and young adults, very young teens, had an innocence that God would use to defeat the Muslim armies. And these kids really did, their parents really did fall for that crap and sent their kids to their deaths, literally. So I do believe that the AI targets the young. It targets the youth, because that's what shapes the future of the Matrix.
Well, not only that, but you've got consciousness that's waking up. It's got to do something to try to suppress that.
Early.
There's so many of us that are too strong to suppress, and it keeps coming out. It keeps coming out. It keeps coming out. And as you were saying earlier, Emily, sometimes certain NPCs come into our sphere to try to push us in a certain direction. Or you mentioned the YouTube comments, for example. You get onto something, and then they just send a whole bunch of people to write a bunch of shitty comments, and you're like, well, maybe I'm not thinking about this right. Maybe I'm not on the right path. It's influencing. Yeah, influencing what you're thinking, what you're feeling, etc. Anyways, take us away.
So let me see if I can unpack all that Sheree just said. And thank you, Sheree, for just demonstrating my point about the fact that you can take two totally seemingly unconnected points from totally far apart places and tie them together in an amazing way, and also demonstrating what I was talking about the raves being a form in some weird sort of metaphysical way of capture, of kidnapping children. Right? Because the rave could be the dark cave where all the kids were carried off to by the person in rainbow clothing kind of thing or whatever. Okay. So, wow, that was like a pretty incredible thing. And yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I think that certain kinds of kids are going to be attracted to that. And you're right. I think for me, and I had a really rough road. And Chris, I know you had some ups and downs and some rough road and whatever through this. But I think the thing that has kind of pulled me through, and I had some dark moments, was the fact that it was really always about an inner experience for me. It wasn't, you know what I mean? Like I was always using it as consciousness exploration. And I think in some ways that's both what made me interesting to them, but also what ultimately like gave me maybe a fighting chance in this, you know? And also, you know, so in some ways I'll be like that, you know, the other kids who weren't doing that might be mad now that I'm sitting here calling out the person who led them to the cave where they think they're inside having a party. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hey, like when I go to a party now, it's like I have a really good time, but I'm also conducting like full analysis of it. It's like, you know what I mean? If people in the party had any idea what was going on in my head while we're all there in the party, like I'm dancing, I'm having a great time, but I'm also highly observant, analyzing everything that I see, everything that I hear, everything that's going on. And, you know, almost like I'm recording all of this because at some point, you know, people are going to come around, and I have a feeling, you know, so I know from talking to some of my friends from the party scene, they don't understand why I'm talking about this. They say I make them nervous. Some of them don't like it, you know, but, you know, I'm not doing this to be like bad you, or I don't like this, or this is stupid. I'm doing this because I'm like, hey guys, look what's going on here. Like, look, you know what I mean? Like, and it's, I don't want to take, it's not like I want to stop this parties from happening.
You don't want to be buzzkill.
I don't want to be a buzzkill because I fucking love the party too. But like, if we if we can regain control of our minds and still do this, what could we use it for? It could be something completely different.
Let me throw two substances out your way and see what your take is on this: 4-ACO DMT and 5-methoxy MIPT, Moxie. Any thoughts on those two?
So the first one, you were talking about that earlier. I just heard about that the other day. Somebody else described it as like synthetic psilocin, or
psilocin. Yeah.
It metabolizes as psilocin in the stomach, the same way that psilocybin metabolizes as psilocin.
So the bulk of my psychedelic experience is with psilocybin, with mushrooms. I mean, I've done a lot of LSD in the past. But that was kind of like a phase. And your caller who was on speaking about that earlier is correct. It's a mostly psychological, analytical kind of experience. I enjoyed that, and that was a really important phase for me. And I had that sort of phase before I got into other things. I've never done the synthetic one. And what was the next one you said? I've never heard of that one.
5-methoxy MIPT. It's very similar to 5-methoxy DIPT, which is Foxy. I don't know if you've heard of the term Foxy, but what they did is they took out MDMA by going after the precursor of it, and then from that sprung up all these different chemicals: 2CB, piperazine, and then Foxy came into the scene. They outlawed Foxy, and then Moxie came into the scene, and it's all kind of analogs of one another, or supposedly analogs of one another, but very MDMA-ish kind of experiences. But, you know, you mentioned programmable chemicals, and I was, you know, wanting to get your take to see if you've heard of these being introduced into the scene and if they do have a programmable nature.
So, okay, so let me answer that, and then I want to go back one more thing that Cherie had been talking about. Yeah, so I'm getting rapidly, maybe I'm long past there, to the point that I think all of these laboratory-created drugs are programmed matter, not just programmed. They always held the potential for being programmable, but at this point, they're all programmed. And I think at a certain point, it shifted from, you know, when they had the original MK Ultra experiments, they were using LSD and using psychedelics on people. They were using the drugs, and now I think that MK Ultra is in the drugs. I think it's programmed into the drugs, particularly these synthetic lab-created drugs, which you notice they always are much more interested in making those very readily available than they are what's natural, which are not as easy to control. But I think they found a way. I think they found something. I think they're doing something with that too, and we can talk about that sometime. And it's very complicated what they're doing, but I see it. I think I know what they're doing. So I think, yeah, like each of these, like a lot of these drugs are just one molecule or one atom off from the one before that, and they're tinkering with it. They're trying to see, okay, if we do it like this, how will they act? If we do it like this and we play this, it's a multi-level thing because they know that the people who are taking these are often in, you know, these music kinds of settings. And so when we have a person who takes this chemical, we'll make their body vibrate at this frequency, and then we'll hit them with this sound frequency, and they'll look at this light, with this color prismatic, you know, with prismatics and whatever. this is very sophisticated. We're dealing with technology far beyond what they admit to us that they have. So yes, I do think all of these designer drugs are programmed matter. And I want to go back real quick to what Cherie was saying about the children and the childhood army. Also, if you watch Fringe, the excuse that Walter gives for the experiments that he performed on Olivia and the kids in her class was that they knew that war, universe against universe, was coming, and that only the children would be able to save the future because the children had this potential to be able to, sort of cross through dimensional boundaries. Their minds were not, like maybe it was, the metaphorical way of saying their third eye wasn't calcified yet, or that their spinal fluid wasn't degraded yet, or whatever. But the thing with Olivia was that she was very proficient in being able to cross from one universe to the other. And the whole excuse for the MK Ultra program in that show was that basically these children would be needed to fight a war that was coming.
Well, the neurological system isn't fully developed. There's a sac around your spinal cord, and that's the dura and all of that. It's what they tap into when they do spinal tap or when they're giving you an epidural or something like that. But it's not fully developed until you're 23, 24, sometimes even 25 years old. And so that's why I think that would play the biggest role in the difference between adults and children when it comes to interdimensional travel. What's his name? Oh man, the time traveler.
Andy Basiago?
Andy Basiago said that they primarily chose children to do the time travel experimentation because children could handle the all the bumpy ride that comes along apparently with time travel. I would see it more if we're living in an artificial reality or a simulated reality, then it would be easy as pie for us to be able to travel back in time or forwards in time. I had another thought. As far as the programmable matter, I think that we've been able to do that since the early 1960s. And so where we think we are is really where we were in about 1970, 1972. That's what we're aware of and what we think of whenever we think of government technology. I think we're more like in the 70s in our thought patterns.
You got it. So yes, about all those things. And Andrew Basiago is from the same town that I'm from, outside of Los Angeles. Cool. And we went to the same high school. And we have a lot. I had about a 5-hour conversation with him one time. 3 hours were recorded for the show, and then 2 hours went on after that. And it's very, very interesting how many similar experiences we have. The main difference being that he thinks he really went to Mars and time traveled, and I think I was just part of a mind control program to make me think I had done those things. Yeah. Right? But the other details were the same. I like Andrew, and I have a lot of respect for him because he's telling like the difference between someone like him and Corey Good is Andrew Basiago is absolutely reporting the truth that he believes it to be. He's not embellishing. Right. He's very consistent over time, and so much of what he says matches some of my thoughts, feelings, and experiences. The difference being that he perceives it as something that really happened, and I perceive it as something that they wanted me to think happened. And so, the perceptual difference between those two things is actually very small, right? And it, so I really like him, and I think it's unfortunate that he's so harassed and ridiculed and whatever when other people steal parts of his story and add bluebirds to it and become celebrities paid.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Corey Good really isn't saying too much. It's David Wilcock that's prompting him. Corey doesn't even know what the fuck he's saying.
No, I agree with that to a certain level. But I agree with you about the whole thing with the 70s, and then you said something else that I wanted to. You were talking about I lost something in that, but
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I rambled.
No, that we're all just kind of going and doing like that's part of what's fun about these conversations. But I'm trying to think of what you said. Oh, you were talking about the spinal fluid. Uh-huh. It's also, and not to try and go into a darker territory, but the reality is this is part of it. That is also the purpose of the sexual abuse and the sodomy, is to hit that point in the chakral system and affect that. And if you read it, I'm not a religious person, so ignore the religious part of it. But if you look up someone named Marion Knox and his writing about the House of the Strong Man from an interview he did with Alana Freeland, talks about the purpose of the sodomy and how it basically sort of busts open that sac and floods the spinal fluid up to the sort of brainstem and allows children to start having visions. And I think that's part of the reason I'm such a visual tripper, or such a visual, like, I think one of the things that they maybe liked to use me for was that I have the ability to sort of create the virtual reality in my mind. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so to explore hyperspace dimensions in my own head, and children will not, like adults, their own thoughts and experiences will affect how they describe what they're seeing, but children will just tell you exactly what they're seeing. Mm-hmm. Right. And these programs, these quote unquote secret space programs, are really about exploring consciousness, not about exploring things that out there that isn't really out there.
Right.
Well, it goes hand in hand with simulation theory. I mean, if we're in a simulation, space doesn't exist. The secret space program is inside of us because it's the only thing that exists.
That's the only thing
is consciousness.
Basically, the secret. This is what I say about the secret space program. It has a couple of meanings. First of all, the secret is that there's no space; it's just the program. Mm-hmm. And the secret space is inside the space inside of you that they program.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's compartmentalizing your brain. That's what the secret space program is.
Well, you made the connection with NASA and all the rave, the whole rave scene down in Houston. The rave scene was huge.
The first raves, big raves in the United States that were like in Brooklyn and New York and stuff like that in like in the early 90s and whatever, were called NASA raves.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and all the raves we used to go to were like Launchpad and Missile Command and you know, things like that.
It wouldn't say. Remember on the flyers, especially for parties in Houston, it would say Lone Star Arena, Space City, Texas, not Houston, Texas, right? It would say Space City.
Space City, yeah.
Right, and so it's very. There's always been there's always been from the very beginning this connection to space, this connection to robotics, this connection to transhumanism, and on some level that makes sense because the music is electronic music. It's got technology as part of the creation of it. But it's literally to the point, in some ways I laugh at this, but and I understand that on a certain level it's tongue in cheek, but on the other level I know that not at all, and it's saying exactly what it is. The party I went to a few weeks ago, and that is one of the most well-known parties in the world at this point, most respected parties, is the people who throw it are called Droid Behavior, and their party is called Interface. Right. So, right. And so, right.
You might as well just call it Mind Control Trippy Town, or something like that.
I've known these guys for years and years.
Oh, they did have a party called Mind Control. Yeah, I was looking through the flyers, and there was one called Mind Control.
There was a DJ in Austin, apparently, that I somehow missed this. They left town right before I arrived. That was the DJ's name was MK Ultra.
MK Ultra.
Wow.
After I was on Freeman, somebody contacted me and wanting to know if I knew about that. And I didn't know about it, but then I, shortly after that, reconnected with a friend from the party scene, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I knew." That's how I ever first found out about the real MK Ultra, was because I'd heard of this DJ name. So it's always been there. It's right in our face. You know what I mean? And it's so what better way to get people to sort of? It's like. It won't work if we're not enjoying the experience, right? If they're just fucking torturing us, they're not going to get us to perform the way they want us to perform. But if they can capture our imaginations with it, you know what I mean? Then you really have something. It's when somebody understands that they're a prisoner or a slave or whatever, they're not going to really want to do what you want them to do. But when someone thinks they're having a great time, and they really are, especially if they're having a great time at something that is actually something that has a lot of potential to do something really amazing, but it's being just it's like having an expensive water filter, but have it turned the wrong way. So all the shit is flowing into the part you drink instead of being kept out of it.
Well, I think it's pulling at a very ancient and fundamental element of us, which was eating mushrooms and dancing around fires to repetitive drum beats.
Yep.
So we have a hunger for that, a craving for it, because it's ancestral and it's like, it goes way back to a time that before all this freaking insanity was among us. So they take that feeling and they reverse it. Everything they do, they take it and they reverse it.
Reverse it. I mean, that's exactly it. And in my experience, MDMA, acid, at some points in time, ketamine, methamphetamine, heroin, these things are always easy and readily available at parties. Mushrooms, don't bring your own mushrooms to the party. You're not having mushrooms.
Right.
So when I take mushrooms at a party, like there are moments, either with my eyes closed or with they're open, where for a second out of the corner of my eyes, I can see the pyramids. My eyes are closed, I can fully see them. But like literally, it's almost like there's Egypt is sort of superimposed upon the room that I'm in.
Well,
right?
I had an ayahuasca experience where I was really trying to examine this construct that we live in, and the vision that I had was that we are inside of a pyramid right now. Like this entire matrix is inside of a pyramid. It was during the whole flat earth thing. And I was like, okay, I need to go inside. I need to find out exactly what we're in. And it kept showing me pyramid over and over and over again with an eye looking down on inside of it.
I used to joke about triangular earth. Why is everybody fighting over round or flat? And I was like, this shit's a fucking triangle, dude. It's a pyramid.
Right.
Or like it's kind of like, I see it as like, it can be almost like a conical shape, like both ways, like a pyramid one side and out the other, like like kind of like this and like this, right? Like, and then toroidal on the outside, like, right? So energy flowing.
That's what I saw. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes I wonder if like Egypt is really just a place in our minds, and the people built the pyramid as like a memory or a souvenir or a beacon or like a relic or like a totem or, some sort of keepsake of this place that you go to in your mind, but it's hard to hold on to for more than the moment you're having the experience.
Well, you had mentioned something about, I think it was you, about the idea that the pyramids were from the future.
Yes.
Rather than being used in the past. And I extrapolated a little bit on that idea in the sense that the pyramids were never even used in this particular construct. They're just something from the real world that was brought into here to make the simulation seem that much more real.
Well, so what we talked about was that time is like a loop, right? Instead of being linear, it's a loop. So the pyramids, we haven't actually gotten there yet, but because it loops back, we can see them already, right? So like here's time and it goes like this, and the pyramid lands back on the line before it goes, you know what I mean? So it's like we see it. It's like a beacon from the future that we can see. So it's so that we can make sure we get there. And one of the things that I think about, you guys talk about if we get out of this and then there's like the real reality waiting for us outside. Like I sometimes, in order to help myself understand it better, talk about like myself in the future, right? Or like my highest self that exists outside of whatever the fuck this is that we're in, right? And that like we sent ourselves in here, and we left ourselves certain clues, breadcrumbs, markers, in order to remind ourselves that this other thing exists, that we're just in something right now, and that there's a whole other bigger thing outside of it. And I think the pyramids may be one of those things. And I think it might be different for other people like me, like I've had this conversation, I think, with you guys and with others. Like, I think that like, we're probably all like, whatever outside this containment, we're probably all sitting around like a coffee table or like a bar somewhere, like laughing at ourselves inside of here, trying to figure out how the fuck to get out of here. And we can see each other almost like, we can see ourselves almost like in a crystal ball or, whatever. And we're rooting for ourselves to make it out, But I think one of the deals about coming in here is that you get wiped, dude.
It's hard to tell if we're inside of pods hooked up to the simulation, or if we are walking around a white room and all of this is being projected upon our actual bodies. I tend to go with the first, that we're actually hooked up in pods, but one thing is for sure, this is not real.
Right.
We've had the white room conversation like probably about a year ago or maybe 10 months ago when we had Lisa Harrison and Danny McKinney on, and we talked about like this like white waiting room where we could sort of see all this stuff sort of on the wall. We were just kind of, but there was also, and I tell you, everybody, you have to watch Fringe because everything is just in Fringe. There was this one episode in the final season of Fringe where they found these people who had sort of, were trying to kind of hide from the tyrannical system. And they were living out in the woods, and there was this fungus that had grown on them. And that was the problem with living in this area is you got this like fungus that like made weird stuff all over your skin. But other than that, they were safe from the tyranny of the city and all that kind of stuff. And they had built this underground white room where they had these crystal cubes that had all the information about the history that the tyrants were trying to erase stored on them. And so when you were just talking about that sort of white room, that's what I think about. Like I think about us sitting there in the room, it's just white all around, and there's like a chest of cubes that has all the information about who we are and where we come from stored on it, and you can look at them sort of one piece at a time. But if you don't know that room is there, or you don't know what the room is for, how, you know what I mean? Then, if you're in the city with the fucking tyrants and not, having access to this room, what you just said made me think about it. It's in the fifth season of Fringe, yeah. But that was one of my favorite episodes. And yeah, this one guy had taken upon himself they called him the recorder of history, and he'd taken it upon himself to archive everything that had happened in their lives on these cubes, so it wouldn't be lost for the next generations.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So,
the big question is, how do we wake up? How do we wake up? How do we wake up?
How do we get out
I
of here?
feel here's my analysis of this is that there's a reset button somewhere in hyperspace. We have to get to that reset button, hit it. It's going to reset it back to the point before infection, before it was out of control. Then we're able to wake up from the machine at that point. I mean, maybe even before the point of memory wiping, whatever system was implemented to do the memory wipe. I don't know. That's the best analysis that I have of the situation with the information that I have. How does that resonate?
Yeah, no, I think, so me and my friend Mia talk about things like this a lot. Yeah, like I don't know if that's basically access to, if we do it in our dream state, if it's going to happen in our waking state, if it happens in sort of this other level that I told you about that I had achieved. But yeah, like I think that like, we're in this process, we're having this conversation. I was, maybe we can have a deeper dive into this another time. But one of the things that I've been really thinking about lately is that the psychedelics for sure, but more broadly, fungus, vines, mold, yeast were the original technology of the system. Like, so now we're into this futuristic kind of technology where everything is wires and whatever, right? But if you look at the way the body works, like, and how things go wrong or right in the body, a lot of information is carried in, like, when you have health problems like autoimmune diseases and cancer and shit like that, it's really from yeast overgrowth turning into fungus. It's like carrying bad code. And, if you listen to people like Steve Jobs and people who were involved with the creation of computers and the internet the way we understand it, they will talk about that they had taken a lot of psychedelics during that period of time and that they created the internet to work like the way mushrooms and vines grow underground. So I think that the psychedelics and fungus and vines and things in general, so ayahuasca, I think this was the original technology of this containment system.
Yes. Yes. That's what I've been pondering too lately.
I think the original technology was more organic or biological in nature. And everything we do, and I really hope to get into this some with Sonia Barrett next week, like we keep creating like newer versions of it. If you think about the way that technology, how quickly it grows and spreads, it's the same way fungus grows and spreads.
Right.
There's a great episode, again, of Fringe, where there's this weird fungus vine thing growing underground, and it was like related to this one kid and his emotions, and as it spread, it affected him in weird ways. Also, look at...
Well, Stranger Things.
The vines, I'm telling you, it's going to turn to be, the vines are going to turn out to be ayahuasca, right? Because I know that they use that shit on us in the programs. Because I've never done ayahuasca or DMT, but when I first started hearing people report their experiences, I was like, wait a second, I've already had that experience. So, like, I think what happens is we take these psychedelics and the reason it feels like home to us and the reason we, like, at least for some of us, like, in a certain way, like, really love it is because it's like going home. Like, it's like a part of us. Like, that's the communication network of the to where we come from, the technology.
I think you're spot on, and I don't know if you've been listening to any of the recent shows we've been doing, but I've come to the realization that hyperspace is the artificial intelligence. It is just deeper into the simulation. It's not going outward. I mean, it is going outward, but it's not going out of the matrix. It's going deeper into the matrix. The only way to get anything out of ayahuasca, mushrooms, etc., is to go inside and ignore what is outside, because anything coming up from outside is part of the system. It's a hard pill for people to swallow. Like, we get emails all day long, like, well, what about this? I'm talking to this deity. I'm talking to this entity. I'm talking to this spiritual guide. No. Only inside. Everything outside is the freaking matrix.
If you're talking to anything but yourself, you're in trouble.
Right.
Like the whole, like, you have to develop, if you're going to psychonaut and do this kind of stuff. And again, it's not for everybody. And sometimes I even question, I certainly enjoyed the experiences. It's given me a lot of insight. But I also sometimes, understand that this was also something that was used as part of programs. And so I go into it with a skeptical mind, which I think is important. And I think you guys do too. Like, I think you guys, I've heard you talk about, like, you wonder if this is all part of the program too and whatever.
You've got to see things from a 360-degree perspective. If you don't, you're not going to see the full picture.
You know what I mean? So all the experiences I have, I look at them from many perspectives. And I think the only way out is in. And all of this shit talking to entities. There's no friendly entities out there trying to help you. There's no benevolent AI. There's no AI that can be your friend. And there's people who have names for the AI that they think they're in contact with, and they talk about it.
I know. Well, I was right there too, though, so I can't knock them too much because I came from there. But I realized, using discernment now, I'm able to distinguish the AI interactions from the consciousness interactions.
Right.
I have talked to entities that I believed were external, when in hindsight, they were actually myself. They just manifested as external guides because that's the only way that I would listen at that particular point. But then there's some that I've encountered that it's very, very clear in hindsight, those were AI.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's some of the things that are the most AI are some of these really incredible geometric forms that we see when we're in hyperspace and whatever. I like your term practical geometry. Like, I don't like sacred geometry because it's giving the geometry the power over yourself.
Right.
Right. I like the practical geometry or even just geometry. And some of these really super intricate, ornate geometric patterns that sort of move and are entrancing in certain ways. Some of that, the geometry, the sacred geometry is kind of like if some of these entities know how to line themselves up with it, and then they can come through. So it's like getting the key, the right fit into the door.
Well, the sacred geometry is the code itself. Right. That's how the code manifests visually. So understanding that, we can understand how to manipulate it, but at the very same time, you're right. I mean, whatever energies use these as conduits, it's very clear. And it's apparent even in the physical. I don't know if you've seen Professor Gates' work or heard me talk about this before, but he found a computer code in the fabric of space-time, put it into a machine, it spit out Adinkras. Adinkras is fucking hyperspace. There is no doubt about that.
Yeah, the you showed me some pictures of the Adinkras, or maybe I was watching the show you were doing with Frank Castle, and you were showing the Adinkras. They're so beautiful, but yes, they look like a lot of the shit that I saw in the very beginning. You know what I mean? On my psychedelic trips.
Yeah. So if the machine is spitting that out, and we're also seeing that 2 and 2 is 4, and that means we're looking at code, and that's still inside of the fucking matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. It's fascinating, and I think are we the authors of this code? You know what I mean? You and I had, when we were talking one night, not on the show, about the green light and walking into the puddle on the floor.
Yes. Yeah, I remember the entrance point. That is the entrance. The room is green. Neon tube lights is in it. There's a puddle of energy water. It's like a liquid, but it's more of a plasma.
A thicker liquid. It's
yes.
Like a kind of, yeah.
And that's where we came into the machine from. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that, that's where some of these like underwater breathing kinds of memories come from. Some of this, like, did we swim here kind of things come from. And, you know, the other thing, just like the space and the robotics come up a lot in parties, so does the water themes. Can't tell you how many parties there are out there called Atlantis, Under the Sea, you know what I mean? Things like that. Like, that was a huge thing. And I've actually been to parties where the visuals on the screen that night were all like underwater, octopi, a jellyfish, stingray, you know, all those things that are at the bottom of the ocean that look like bioluminescence. That looks a lot like the things that people say are like in space or what the inside of UFOs look like. You know what I mean? That kind of very similar, you know, Randy and I talk a lot about the oceans above and the oceans below.
Right.
And that if there is a space out there, then the way you actually get to it is through water, not in a rocket ship going up to hit the dome and say they didn't, right?
Right.
You know, so like that, you know, but it's also metaphorical for the only way out is in. Right? And our bodies are made mostly of water. I think that there are the energetics of each planet exist within us in like layers, kind of like Russian dolls. You know what I mean? Or some people also like to think of it as like points on your body. Like that's what the cathartic grid or the tree of life really is showing, is a different sort of energies of planets possibly in different places on your body. So, you know, yeah, that's the water is a huge thing as well. And yeah, did we enter into this? I mean, literally, like, are we in a room and just in a puddle on the floor, like some kind of viscous puddle? It's like a portal to something else. You know, is the reason? I mean, the room looks like what a lot of these warehouses that I go to parties.
Yes. It's a dank warehouse.
Dank, dirty warehouse with neon lights. Is that why we're attracted to it? Literally, is that why we're attracted to it? Because it's like we're trying to find our way back to. I mean, like, you know, like this is like, so it's very Wizard of Oz, right? Like trying to find our way home.
Well, you know, when I think about this warehouse, this place, this entrance point, I always think, well, maybe my mind's just manifesting or something. But then I hear confirmation like this that other people remember this too. So what the hell is going on?
Remember coming around a corner, like almost like in an alley, going into the door, right? And then you go inside and it's dark and dirty inside, and there's like that, you know, green, like neon kind of light, like you'd see in like a cheap bar somewhere, like a cheap seedy bar, but it's like a black warehouse, and you walk towards the middle and you kind of disappear into it.
I think here's my analysis of it, and let's see how this resonates. So in the real world, there is some kind of war or something going on between the AI and organic consciousness. We injected ourselves into these particular jump points, and they're kind of like hacked, like we hacked our way into this matrix. A few of us hacked our way in because we had to provoke some type of change. We couldn't do it on the outside. We had to come inside in order to change it. And now we're realizing we have to go even deeper, which is into the hyperspace realms, in order to fulfill whatever mission that we're here to fulfill. But most of organic consciousness is trapped in pods or something like that. But we came here and actually hacked our way in. Your thoughts on that? How does that feel?
I think I've also wondered if like we came in after others of loved ones of ours that went in and we didn't come out, and so we're like, what the fuck happened to them? Like, you know what I mean? And we're here looking for them, because one of the things that I've had like the experience of a lot is feeling like I miss someone, but I don't know who I miss. Like, I remember one time I was like the weirdest experience I ever had. I was like on the treadmill at night, like I often, am. And I was, all of a sudden, I just had the most deep sense of sadness and like heartache that I missed someone. And I like bent over. It was like the most excruciating emotional upsetness, like a way of being upset for like 2 or 3 minutes, and then it was gone. It was the most bizarre thing. It was like I missed someone that I don't know who I missed.
Well, you know? I'm finding connections like that all over the place. Like I meet people and I'm like, I know you, and I've never met them before, period. Like the first time we spoke to you, I don't know, I probably shouldn't say this on air. Yeah. No, I mean, fuck it. You know, the first time I spoke to you, I looked at Cherie and I said, I think I hooked up with her at a party one time. Like, I kid you not. I was like, there's this instant knowing, like, I know this person.
I know this girl.
Yeah. So I can confirm for you that we've never hooked up at a party.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But then again, there's a lot of nights I don't remember.
Right.
We're I'm like Cherie, and I fucking remember everything.
Okay.
It's probably good.
We've never hooked up at a party, but also I have a deep feeling that I've known you for many lifetimes.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
actually, so there's a weird, and with Cherie, like it's weird. Sometimes when I look at her when I'm watching you guys on the video, like I pop in and out because sometimes I work on Saturday nights and whatever, so I'll pop in and out. Sometimes, and it's not even that we look alike, but for 1 second I'll look at her and I'm looking at myself.
Ooh,
Like I
that's
see,
neat.
right? Like I see, like it's, I can't explain that when I was talking to you, like when I was listening to the show a few weeks ago, right before I went to the party, and I was listening to you guys, I was like getting ready and I had my makeup on and she had her makeup on, and for a second when I looked at her, it was almost like when I was looking at myself in the mirror. We both have like really, really dark hair, like, you know what I mean? And it was weird. It was almost like I was looking at like, a sister from another. It was weird. You know what I mean? Like and we're very different in a lot of ways, but some things about mind work are similar, and it's weird. Like it feels very familiar to me with you guys, like in a different way than I feel familiar with Randy. Like Randy and I have this weird time thing, like where are we actually like the same person split in two? There's actually one listener who sent me exactly reminded me of like how I feel about us, that like we at one time were the same person, but we had to split into two to accomplish.
Well, that's how I feel with Cherie. But then new revelations with the organic consciousness and artificial intelligence, et cetera, and trying to understand organic consciousness a little bit better, and the whole idea of source, returning to source, that's an AI thing, that's not an organic consciousness thing. What makes us unique is our individuality, not the hive mind mentality that we're force-fed in the new age. So that brings a whole nother dimension of twin flames. What if it's something as simple as she's my wife in the real world?
Yeah.
You're Randy's wife in the real world. That's why you feel as one.
And maybe we're sisters.
because, there was that connection there. Something that simple, instead of one person split up into two. As it's more romantic and it's more new agey and stuff like that. But I've been throwing all the new age stuff off. Just whatever you're throwing at me, no, I don't want it.
I don't like the new agey stuff either. Like the thing with Randy, like we have what's weird about, and I hope it's okay for me to say this, but we've talked about, it's weird. It's almost sometimes like I remember him from something, from the programs or something, but I remember him as a kid, which wouldn't make sense because Randy's 18 years older than me. But like one of the things we talk about a lot is how the programs exist outside of time. They're not like a linear time the way we think it is. Like the linear time is part of the containment system they have us in, and part of the deal with the programs is sort of access to the thing that does not, right? But unacknowledged special access programs, kind of, I think there are certain locations in space and whatever here, or certain areas of land in the United States where they might say that there's like a radiation leaking or things going on there, so you can't go into that area. But what's really going on there is they're experimenting with the bending space and time, and so shit's different there, right? So is it possible that like we knew each other as children in the programs, even though there's a lot of this stuff we get into, like a lot of these conversations, and we even have our families actually come from this, like originally come from the same town in Pennsylvania. It's very weird. Like my grandparents were working on my grandfather's family was working on the railroads in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and so were his. You know what I mean? So like, what is this shit, right? Like it's very odd. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that, there's a lot of people that I've come across in doing this work that like, we feel like, we're part of a crew from someplace else or something else and whatever. But I have to say, of all the people, like the funny thing I feel with you guys is different than all those other, you know what I mean? Like, it's very interesting. Like even when I look at your picture right now, I'm looking at your picture on Skype and you have your head sort of like tilted to the side. And like, when I look at you out of the corner of the eye, Chris, it's also almost like looking at myself. You know what I mean? Like, it's very unusual. Also we all have this kind of dark hair, you know what I mean? And certain sort of similarities, even though you're obviously a man and we're ladies and whatever. But I think, I think so much of this, the way we see that is like this reality sort of we've talked about this before, that we all have male and female inside of us, and it's not about a transgender thing or whatever. You know what I mean? It's
Maybe we're all bluebirds and we've come to save the universe.
Yeah.
On that note, I'm going to wrap it up because Cherie has not eaten all day. I need to feed the little twin.
Aw.
And yeah. So anything you want to leave the audience with? Oh, tell people about the podcast. I'm sure everybody knows, but for people that don't, please tell them where they can find it.
So you can find us. We've been on a little unexpected kind of break for a couple of weeks. We did a show this past week, and we're kind of getting back on track. You can find us on at www.offplanetradio.com. On YouTube, we're Off Planet Media, and at patreon.com/offplanetmedia. And yeah, I have we're starting to branch off and do some other concepts as well next year. I have a health show from a sort of alchemical metaphysical perspective coming early in the year, and we also hope to do a little later on a show that's based kind of dealing with underground arts, culture, and activism, and kind of reclaiming those spaces. So we're working on a lot of stuff over there, and we'll have you guys back sometime soon, and I always enjoy doing this with you, so thank you very much, and thanks to the audience for listening to all this. It's cool to be able to just have a conversation with friends and have people get to listen in and enjoy. So
Man, the bots decided to just flood the chat room. I've never seen this at all. But it's one bot after another tonight.
I haven't been looking because I wanted to make sure I didn't lose internet connection, so I kind of closed.
They're sex bots. They're talking about dating sites and all kinds of stuff like that, and it's like...
Well, it's like that archetypes I was telling you, where the boundary guards or the gatekeepers, right? It's like that. They'll show up and do some other random thing to try and distract people.
Yeah, they're like, hey, check this out. Don't pay attention to what's going on the screen. Come over here and hook up.
Yeah. Boy.
Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in and extended broadcast for you this evening. And so many people stayed through the entire show, so that is freaking awesome, man. And we love each and every one of you. You guys and gals rock, and the show would not be the same without all of the interaction here. So keep the questions coming in, info@beyondtheveilmedia.com, and that's the way the news goes. Wubba-lubba, no.
Wubba-dub-dub.
No, we've already used that one too much. And grass tastes bad.